Disclaimer. To the Pharisees and Karens out there.
How dare you?
All guests on this show do not reflect the opinions of the host. The purpose of this show is to have interesting conversations, stretch our minds, and grow.
Not what we want.
If you are looking for an echo chamber, viewer and listener discretion
is advised.
You talk about extreme.
What is happening and what is up? Hold out your glass, because we're about to fill it up.
Join us as we travel and explore the vast unknown. It's a hero's journey with dragons to slay, damsels to save, and innumerable treasures to hoard. Torches high.
Look at it from a different perspective.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. This episode, we got a very, very special guest. I'm glad to get this man back on. Great dude. I love chatting with him and chopping it up. But before we get to the guest, let me introduce the other rejects that are with us. Tonight we got Julia from Cosmic Peach. What is going on, Julia?
What's up? I am really excited for this one. I've worked with the good doctor a couple of times now, and It's always a blast. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Yes, it is. And Tyrone, what is going on, sir? Thank you very much for making it again.
Yep, thank you. All right, so everything, like I say before, you can find me on my website, rebirthoftheword.com. I'm excited for this show. Thank you, appreciate it.
Of course, no, thank you for joining us, my man. And finally, you already know what time it is. We got Prometheus Lens on here. He's about to turn it up to about 93 degrees in this house tonight. So my man, Doc, please introduce yourself and let everybody know what's up.
Yeah, my name's Justin. I got the nickname, Doc Brown. I'm the host of the Prometheus Lens podcast. Anywhere you can consume content, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all those fine establishments, you can find me there. Just search up Prometheus Lens podcast. And this year I just released my first book, The Epic of Esau, Birthright and Seed War. You can find that on Amazon, or even go to my website, PrometheusLensPodcast.com, and get you a signed copy. Thanks for having me, Nick.
No, of course. Thank you. And if people haven't heard it already, he's been on the show before in the past covering his book. I mean, he's been on plenty of other people's shows as well covering that book. Check it out. Check the book out. And yeah, thank you again, Doc. So, elongated skulls. I think we've all probably thought about those, looked into them and stuff, but what was it that brought you into really looking into that, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, honestly, my gateway drug into all the strangeness was giants.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's cool. I grew up in church and never heard about these creatures. And then once I became an adult, I started finding people on YouTube and Apple podcasts and things like that talking about these guys. And then that kind of led me to L.A. Marzulli. And then I started seeing these elongated skulls. And I was like, man, what the hell are these things?
Oh, that is wild. The Giants was like your gateway. That's interesting. Huh. Nice. What was it like? Was there certain ones like in the United States, or were you focusing on ones out of the country, or both? What was it that you started looking at, I guess, at first that was enough proof to you that you thought that these things were legit?
Yeah, my first encounter with them was actually through L.A. Marzulli, and he actually got basically the all-star team of Christian fringe guys. We're talking about Dr. Aaron Judkins, Dr. Judd Burton. I'm trying to think. There's just so many of them. He just had a smorgasbord of the fringe guys, and they went down there to Peru, and they met with Brian Forrester. And they were down there for several months, and they just recorded the whole thing. And they were allowed to have access to the Paraca skulls down there in Peru. So they actually got to hold these things, do castings of them. They brought doctors and optometrists. They took DNA samples, just all this stuff. They actually just did a really thorough job of investigating these skulls. And I just read about it and watched some of the documentaries, and then that kind of just stemmed out. And the Paraca skulls in Peru, they get all the attention. But honestly, it wasn't until here recently that I actually started looking. Man, they're everywhere. There's not one country or continent that they have not found elongated skulls. It's a global phenomenon.
Oh, it's really like that, huh?
Yeah.
Because I'll be totally honest with you. I mean, I'll admit it. You know, I'm wrong all the time anyway, so I'm used to it. You know, it wasn't really up until probably about maybe 6 or 8 months ago that I even contemplate these things. Like, I always thought it was bull, to be totally honest with you. And then I had actually a couple of people on that, like, you know, like their academic career probably, you know, would have been affected if they're talking. So, like, I was just like, you know, I guess this, and then I had Heather on and somebody else. I think it might have been Gregory Little that actually between him and Heather, I was like, yo, I guess these things are legit. Like, and now you're saying like almost every country has them. I never knew that. Swear to God. That's wild.
I just
not know
did
these
like a quick Google search earlier and just kind of looked up some, like, for example, you know, like I said, Peru, they get all the attention, but there was a guy named Giulio Tello in 1928. He found over 300 just in that year alone. And so Peru was just littered with them, but they also found them in Bolivia, Chile, Mexico, the United States. The Chinocan and Choctaw Indians had elongated skulls. The Caribbean, Russia, France, Germany, Central Asia, China, the Middle East, Africa, Egypt, Polynesia, Papua New Guinea. And there was one called Vanuatu, and I may be pronouncing that wrong, but it's in the Oceania region. But it says that the head binding is still practiced today to resemble cultural deities.
Damn.
So I mean, that's what most of them like that. Yeah, most of them from my research says that it was the guys that had like the elongated skulls and stuff like that.
But the head binding is completely like you can tell which skulls are authentic and which skulls have been manipulated with head binding because it's completely different.
I would
you know what I'm saying? Like,
sorry, go.
No, I was just going to say, like, I think they were trying to emulate what they were seeing. And it's kind of obvious, the ones that have been manipulated, but there are organic, as Doc was saying, it's completely organic. Their skulls really were elongated. And you can see it even in like Egyptian hieroglyphics that there were pharaohs who had these huge skulls.
Yeah, Akhenaten,
and so Akhenaten, his sister / wife or whatever, and their child had like these weird Prometheus, weird shaped skulls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like you said, it's easy to tell which ones are from head binding because when you go to mainstream academia, that's what they try to do. They try to whitewash and just broad brush stroke these things and say, oh, it's just all from head binding. And like you said, I mean, there's telltale signs because they have like flat spots on their head where the boards were pressing against, or if they used rope, they would have indentions where the ropes were. And all the ones that they find that are proven from head binding, there's certain things that just don't change. And for instance, is all these people that have these elongated skulls from head binding, they all have their Sajra Sutra line. And they found some of these that they're absent. And I brought some items for show and tell for you guys. I have a replica from one of the Paraka skulls.
That shit was
here.
real. I was like, yo.
Yeah.
I was like, baller.
I smuggled it out of Peru. And some of the things that LA talked about was, you know, like I was saying, if you look at this, there is no Sajra Sutra.
Yeah.
And for those that's unfamiliar, this is basically like a peace sign on your head. You have this line that goes up the center, and once it gets to the soft cap, it branches off into a Y. And all the ones they find from head binding still have this Sajra Sutra. But the ones that they find that are not from head binding, they're like this one. The Sajra Sutra is missing. And like I said, all the ones they find from head binding, this Sajra Sutra does not disappear. So that shows us that this is genetic. And then at the same time, if you look here at the front angle, the eye orbits, they actually, LA brought optometrists with him to study these things. And that's basically a fancy word for an eye doctor.
Yeah, nice.
And they measured these orbits, and these are 30% larger than a normal human skull, and even the ones proven from head binding. So he said the optometrist said they're 30% larger, so therefore the pupils, would have been 30% larger, and the distance is even closer. He said, so they're built like an owl. He said, it's my opinion. He said that these hybrid race creatures had night vision. And when you get into all the lore and legends of giants, they were cave dwellers. And another example was the ones from head binding, the brain case volume doesn't change. But some of these, the brain case volumes increased by like 15 to 20%. And another thing that's really, really fascinating was right here. This is an anchor point where the spine comes in. They call it the foramen magnum or something like that. But see, this is all the way at the back. On a normal human skull, they're right here in the center. That way you can balance it better. And all the elongated skulls from head binding that we found, that anchor point does not change. They're all right there. So binding the head doesn't change this. It's another genetic marker. And it was designed specifically to counterbalance this huge head, because if it wasn't anchored where it's at, the weight would just pull down. They'd be looking at their feet all the time.
That's incredible. I've heard that some of them, the teeth are a giveaway too. Like some of them had double rows of teeth, or like larger than normal teeth, stuff like that. Have you seen any of those?
Yeah, I've seen some of the double row teeth. Also, even just like the density of their bones. They said that some of these are just a lot thicker than a normal person. And one thing that I really found cool, and I'll show you this in this book, this is Elongated Skulls in the Path of Viracocha from Brian Forrester. And one of the things he talks about, too, that was genetic with these guys. And I'll show you this picture. So you basically have a skull layout, and it's got all these lines telling you, what is what on the skull. And the things that I want to point out is there's holes on your cheekbones here. Then you have two at the bottom next to your mandible down here at the lower part. And what it talks about is in here, the ones that they studied that were different from the head binding ones is that they had an extra set of holes. And forgive me on the pronunciation, because I'm a redneck and I can barely speak English. So if you get these big fancy words, I'm going to struggle. But it talks about, it says the normal human skull has 3 pairs of small holes in the front called the foramen and the zygomatico fascial. See, I told you. Below and to the outside of the eye sockets, and the supraorbital just below the eye sockets, and the mental foramen in the mandible lower jaw. Almost all, if not all, of the elongated skulls of Paracas area also have a 4th pair called the parietal foramen, which is very uncommon in most human skulls. And basically this was at the back of the head. And so it's an extra set of holes. And what they've said when they studied this, it says when this is present, it transmits an emissary vein into the superior sagittal sinus. The superior sagittal sinus is a large vein found in the human head. This vein travels over the top portion of the skull, beginning at the top of the skull and moving to the back part of the skull. So they believe that this perennial foramen is present in the elongated skulls to assist in the blood flow due to the non-normal shape of the head, and would be an evolutionary development. So it's got stuff to do with genetics for these heads.
That is wild. So I worked for a surgeon, and she did a lot of face stuff, and I would like sit and look at x-rays all the time, because x-rays have come a long way. Those are like 3D now. You can see everything. And I would ask her, like, what are those holes that are in all the skulls? And she said nerves and veins. Everybody has them. Mm-hmm. And so you're saying they have an extra pair on the back. That is absolutely proof to me that this is a biological, not just like a freak of nature thing. All of them have that?
Mm-hmm. All the ones that were not natural, or sorry, the ones that were natural.
The ones that weren't manipulated.
Yes. So it proves that it's genetic.
Right. Yeah. I was going to say, so that's like, well, what do you think? All right. Here's the question of the hour then. What do you think that they were?
Well, with me, when people point to the head binding, as, imitating their gods or a veneration type thing, I think a lot of people forget to ask the why questions. Well, why? If they are just copying or mimicking something, why would they do that? So it had to be something really important, because you think they start this. I think they said they can't do it till the kids are at least a year or two old. That way that soft cap, closes all the way. But so imagine you've got a 2-year-old kid and you're strapping boards to their head and rope and tying it as tight as you can to force this skull to elongate and deform. This is extremely painful. You can imagine the headaches and the discomfort. I mean, this was not something that you just go get knocked out and wake up and you get plastic surgery and it's fixed. No, this is something you had to do for years. It was years of pain. So it had to be extremely important to them. So I tell people, I use this modern, example, probably, what was it, maybe 10 years ago, Morgan Wallen, the big country star, broke out. And what did he do? He cut his hair in the shape of the mullet. He brought the mullet back. Well, next thing you know, every kid, their brother and dad has a mullet now, because they're venerating, they're emulating this predominant figure. So I think that's what's going on here. And when you go to like South America, Peru, where these Paracas skulls are found, they have all these legends about Quetzalcoatl and Viracocha. And it says that they were pale-skinned, bearded, red-bearded, elongated skull people that just showed up on, it said, a boat of serpents without rafts or without rows. So this God shows up, and it says that he basically gives them the 7 sacred sciences. And if the equivalent to that is Genesis 6 fallen angels, in the book of Enoch says that they come down, the angels came down, bred with the daughters of men, and gave them all this forbidden knowledge. And that's what they've done here with this Viracocha and Quetzalcoatl. That they show up, and the Viracocha, in his legend, he has a group of like followers, and they're called the Viracochan. And what do? They travel around. He civilizes the people of South America, teaches them how to do agriculture, make megalithic architecture and structures, and all these things. So it kind of mirrors, to me, that whole Genesis 6 narrative. And honestly, I'll show you in this book here, too, because he talks about it, that path of Viracocha. They have a list of all of the cities in the legend that Viracocha and his Viracochan went to and civilized and taught all these things. And all those cities are in a straight line path. Actually, it's like a northwest path across the continent. And every single one of those cities that's listed, that's what they call the path of Viracocha. But without fail, every single one of those cities has huge megalithic architecture structures and elongated skulls out the wazoo. And when the Spanish showed up, they documented in some of their journals that they noticed this fair-skinned, red-haired, elongated skull people walking amongst them, and they were obviously different. South American people are dark-skinned and they can't hardly grow a beard. So the Spanish was like, "Who are these people?" And all the locals said, "These are descendants of the Viracochan." So, I mean, my opinion is, according to legends and everything, these were fallen angels.
Well, so I believe that they actually were supernatural, too. Not only did they have, like, a different bone structure and everything, but I do believe that they were mistaken to be gods because they had, like, a supernatural aspect to them. I don't know if you subscribe to that, but I believe they were able to do something that made these people think, "Oh my God, these people need to be worshipped."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Because I mean, when you read that narrative in Genesis 6 in the Book of Enoch, it said they traded their first estate, so they come down and took fleshly form. And if we take that at face value, they showed up and they had divine knowledge. They had a lot of scientific advancements and things. They were doing all these things to these primitive people, and to them, these were magical. These were just amazing things. So they worshipped them as gods. And that's why a lot of people talk about the Spanish when they come and invaded South America. They just took over so easily because the legend of Viracocha and Quetzalcoatl is that they left on the boats of serpents just like they came, but they said that they would return. And when they did, they would return at a time that they needed them, and they would do all these things. So when the Spanish showed up, they showed up on these large boats. They were pale-skinned, bearded men, and they had on this silver armor that was just glistening in the sun. They thought that this was the return of Viracocha and his Viracochan. So when they came, they worshipped them, brought them gold and silver and food and all this stuff. So the Spanish just kind of went along with it. They was like, hell, we can take over this whole country and get all the riches without even having to fight them. We'll just go along with it.
Real quick, just since we stopped for a second. Tim, would you like to introduce yourself? I'm so sorry about that too. I forgot to send out the link, so you were late.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, Tim Constantine, Sixth Sensory Podcast. Had to jump on, talk to my boy Doc Brown here, and
nice.
I'll let him continue. Happy to be here.
Listen.
Yeah, I seen you come in. I was like, oh, we got another Tennessee boy in here. A couple
That's right.
rednecks now.
Oh, that's right, Doc. You're in Tennessee too?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Oh,
where they were finding a lot of the stuff that Doc's talking about.
Mm.
It's not in the history books, but
shit. How far away are you from Nashville?
I'm in Nashville.
Yeah, I know you are. How far away are you, Doc?
I'm at the very far eastern tip. I'm butted up right against North Carolina. I'm like an hour from Asheville.
Dude, you're so close to me. What the?
Yeah, we'll have to get together sometime.
Yeah, no, for real. Yeah. Even Tyrone is like right over here too. Holy shit. Yeah, I'm about like 4 hours away from Asheville, I think. 4.5 hours away.
Okay. Yeah, I'm about 1 hour.
That's not bad.
I'm on the other side of the planet, so I guess I can't come to the meetup. I didn't know that they found elongated skulls in Tennessee, though. That's interesting. I know there's like mounds and stuff in like a lot of the southern.
I don't know about elongated skulls. I should have said that a little bit better. I was more talking about giants.
No, just like full on skeletons.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do they have elongated skulls, or are they just big with like regular skulls?
Well, I mean, I don't know, Doc. Like, I'm sure Fritz Zimmerman would have something to say about that. But the giant records that I've looked at, I don't remember the skulls being mentioned, but the bones were big, right? Like 7-footers, and you've got the Tennessee little people too. So you've got like a whole Narnia situation going on where they were finding like real small, and that's interesting too. It's like that's well documented too. Like White County, Tennessee, Sparta, Tennessee. These farmers were finding all these little people, but counter to that, you also had giants too. So that's what I was more talking about. All kinds of weird.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it before you came on, but I'd found, where was it? Let me scroll up. That the Chinookan and the Chickaw Indians, that they had found elongated skulls amongst those tribes of people. Mm. That was something I just recently found out. But I was going to show you these two. Dr. Aaron Judkins, he was one of the guys I mentioned earlier that went down to Peru and actually held these skulls and investigated them and done castings of them and stuff. And I found in LA's book that he gave Aaron a section to give his notes and thoughts on the skulls and what he thought about them and all this kind of stuff. But in there, he actually had hand-drawn diagrams of these elongated skulls. And he had calipers and all the measurement tools and measured everything to the eye orbits, to the brain case volume, all this stuff. But he had hand drawn all those on some drafting paper and wrote down all the measurements. And I'm friends with Judkins, so I emailed him And I was like, hey, man, I seen your drawings of the elongated skulls in LA's book. Do you still happen to have those? And he was like, yeah, I still got them. I was like, man, would you care to like scan them for me and send them to me? I'd love to like decorate them and Photoshop them up and stuff like that. So he ended up sending them to me, and I just kind of put them on some like a background, like look like old scroll or something. But he sent me 3 different ones. And it's got all the measurements and stuff on them. They're pretty cool. And I'm going to SpiracyCon. It's the 3rd week in August. It's in Cave City, Kentucky. And Dr. Aaron Judkins is actually going to that event too. So I asked him, I said, would you mind? I said, if I printed these on cardstock, you know, I said, and sold them at ConspiracyCon. I said, and if you'll sign them for me, I said, we can split some of the sales on it. So he done that. So I'm actually bringing these to SpiracyCon for Dr. Aaron Judkins to sign to sell at the conference. So if anybody is in the Cave City, Kentucky area, come check out SpiracyCon, man. It's going to be a real good time. John Pounders from Now You See TV's putting it on, and he's just got an all-star lineup of people that's going to be there. Should be a real fun weekend.
He's been in the game for a while too, right? Pounders has. Like, he was talking about giants and watchers and all that back before a lot of people were.
Yeah.
I didn't know Kentucky was so hip. I thought it was. Yeah, man. Hey, and I'm not saying anything because I lived in Kentucky for like 15 years. My family's from Kentucky, but yeah, I wish I was closer because I would go. That sounds like a great time.
When is that?
It's the 3rd weekend of this month.
Oh, damn.
In Cave City, Kentucky. I think it's like the 22nd, I think. But another thing, too, I was going to show you guys, and I try to show references on all the stuff that I talk about because I'm not some genius. I read a lot, and I take people's puzzle pieces and put them together, you know. So I had some stuff from Brian Forster's book that I'd mentioned, and this one is L.A. Marzulli's book. And I think he charges like $60 for this book, but this thing's almost as thick as a Bible. And it's just jam-packed full of information, full color photos on all the pages. And he's basically compiled all of his years of work on the giants and elongated skulls in this one book. So it's really fascinating. But one of the ones that with these elongated skulls that is probably the most fascinating enigma of all is this skeleton that they deemed Waiki. And I don't know if any of you guys have heard of that name or if you're familiar with that skeleton or not. Nope. But it almost looks like a freaking alien. And they actually put a picture up of this thing beside of an alien, like as a comparison.
Oh, Jesus.
So it's just got all the features of this other guy. It's got the large orbits and everything else. But what's really crazy about it is this thing in total height. Now, this was a full skeleton, guys. This just wasn't the head. But its total height was 19.68 inches. And here's the actual picture of this mummy. So if you notice, the soft cap is still open, right?
Oh, yeah. Let me.
And it's 19 and a half inches long. But look at the teeth. It's got molars. And this was proven to be a small child because even the soft cap is open. So this is
a baby elongated.
Yes. This is a baby. But look, the baby has molars, bro.
Well,
has freaking molars.
That means that baby was snacking on some hot at some point, like the elongated skull ate meat from birth.
It's pretty crazy, man. And one of the doctor's notes, he said, it is a strange being of 50 centimeters tall, deformed head. The frontanelle is still open, however, has molars. The orbits of the eyes are very large and have a lower jaw with 2 bumps. And it says this is not a dwarf, that their bones are thin and small.
Cute kid.
Can I just ask you something really quick? Why do you think they're always finding the skulls and not the rest of the body?
Right? That is a good question.
Like, why is it a bunch of heads everywhere and no bodies to be found?
Well, this and the Waikiki, it's the full body, but it's just
but that's like a rare. That's a really rare find. You know what I mean? Because most of the time when they dig these up, it's just the skulls, and it makes you wonder. Like, did they all get decapitated in some type of like siege on the giants, or you know what I mean? Like, where's the body?
Yeah, well, see, a lot of them theorize that this was kind of like a skull cult type veneration thing. That they would take these skulls of the dead ancestors and put them, in temples or in these carved out rock faces and kind of venerate them. I was talking with Derek Olson, and he said down there that he talked to some of the locals and that they had legends and things that their kings and they had these elongated skulls. They would take their skulls and place them ceremonially in some of these rock faces that are cut out in squares on certain dates and things. And they said that when the moon on a certain day shined on these skulls, they believed that they were venerating and resurrecting the dead giant kings. And then also you have the Sakaras.
Altars.
Yeah. And the Sakaras, I think that's what their names are, but it's basically the grave robbers of South America. That's how 90% of these skulls are found. The grave robbers go in and illegally dig out these graves, and where South America is such a hot, dry climate, it actually preserves the bones really well. And so they take these, and the skulls is what everybody's fascinated with. So if they dig up this body, they just snap the head off and take it to a black market to sell because they know that's what everybody's interested in is these elongated skulls.
Yeah, Doc, you said something about them venerating their ancestors. And I think that there's something to that because I've been looking into some of the old Canaanite tribes and some of the Canaanite temples and some of the things you find over there in the Middle East to do with this. Essentially, it's a cult. And this cult seemed to be interested in just that, venerating their ancestors to the point where, I mean, it kind of reminded me of Star Wars, where you had the Jedis that die and they come back as like the spirits that help the living Jedi. It seems like some of these Canaanites, that was part of their religion, was literally talking to, I don't know if they really were or not, but they seemed to believe that they were talking to their ancestors who were like giants as well, giant priest kings.
Yep. And another one, too, is like Göbekli Tepe. Dr. Aaron Judkins, talking about him once again, he studied that place and wrote a book about it. And he was even talking about, it's not like in the mainstream news, but if you search it up, you can find it, that the people that built Göbekli Tepe were into skull cult veneration. That they at the site they had dug up skull caps, and they had drilled holes, fine holes through them to like string them up and hang them up inside of those stone circles and stuff. So it was another type of skull cult veneration.
They all have structures honoring Sirius too. So however you guys feel about him, is he or not? But Graham Hancock has talked a lot about these places, Göbekli Tepe, giants on Malta, like anywhere there's megalithic structures, there's temples and structures aligned with Sirius, legends about giants, legends about people coming up out of nowhere, teaching them animal husbandry, architecture, everything. Some of them have elongated skulls, some of them are just giants, but it's literally in every single ancient culture. Sirius, giants, gods coming up from out of nowhere and teaching them how to do and it just is interesting to me because until you find the skulls, they're just stories. But then after you find the skulls and the skeletons, it's like, are they just stories though? Because now we got bones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got stories. Then, like I said, I listed a bunch of those countries and continents. You find those elongated skulls everywhere. Every culture has stories of giants. And no matter where you go, there's just too many stories that rhyme. I mentioned South America. They talk about Viracocha and Quetzalcoatl. In North American tribes, the Indians talk about the star people came down, stole the women and bred with the women. Gave them all this knowledge and technology. Then they also have stories of the red-haired, six-fingered giants that they battled with and tried to push them out of their lands. You go across the ocean, you have the same thing, the Genesis 6 narrative and the giants over there. Like you had mentioned earlier, Julia, all the depictions of Egyptian kings and queens and princes with these elongated skulls. And there's another similar story that a lot of people don't realize, but it's, and Graham Hancock talked about it. I can't remember the name of that temple now, but some temple they found, and there was the story of the Duwat and the first time. And there was a story in there about Osiris, and that he basically got tired of the kingship, stepped down and loaded on a boat with a bunch of his servants and went out to civilize the world, to teach them how to grow crops and do all these things. So there's another story just like the Viracocha and so many others. And even the same thing with the Sumerian Kings list. When you go through the Kings list, I can't remember the guy's name now, but he's like the third or fourth one. He was one of the god kings. Same thing.
Gilgamesh.
He stepped down. It wasn't Gilgamesh. It was somebody before him, but he had stepped down from the kingship. He didn't die. He stepped down and handed it over to his son because he was going to civilize the world.
Which one is that? Is it Anu, Enki, or Enlil?
No, it wasn't a god. He was just a king that was on this Sumerian kings list. I'm wanting to say it's Ishki and Gasher, I think.
There's Kegel.
And he stepped down, and I think he handed it off to Enmerkar. And I think that's who a lot of people align with Nimrod, is Enmerkar, because in the legends, Enmerkar was considered the great builder. And it said that he built this tower. There's actually letters that they found, corresponding tablets between Enmerkar and Lord Arata. And so it was tying this Lord Arata with the mountains of Ararat. And in these letters, he's basically writing on these tablets and sending it all the way up there to the Ararat Mountains to this king. And he's asking for his help in building this grand tower. And he says, basically, I know you're this grand architect and you have all these nice cedars up here. I'm trying to build this magnificent tower to Anana in hopes that she will embrace me there, and asking for this Lord Arata's help. And this Lord Arata sends a letter back. It was like, well, that's great. Well, what use is that to me? So he's basically denying to help him, and they have this war and everything. So a lot of people theorize that this Enmerkar was Nimrod, and the Lord Arata was either Noah or one of Noah's descendants, because he still had the pre-flood knowledge and was a great builder because they built the ark.
What do you think Inanna's role was there?
It was just one of those. She was the queen of heaven, and it was when you have those stories, she's tied in so closely with Gilgamesh and Enkidu and those stories. It's what was it? The Epic of Gilgamesh. She becomes so infatuated with Gilgamesh, she tries to take him as a husband, and he rejects her, and he kind of throws it in her face. He's like, every man you love winds up dead, or you betray him. So now I don't want no part of that.
Or missing.
She gets offended. And that's when she goes and talks to her father, Enlil, and is like, he's just insulted me, and now he's rejected me. I want you to send the bull of heaven and kill them all. And so him and Enkidu tag team and kill this bull of heaven. And what's funny is, if she was embarrassed before, the way the story goes, she'd come out even worse, because Enkidu takes the bloody thigh of the bull and smacks her in the face with it.
Oh my God, I've
Yeah.
never heard this.
Those
story.
texts,
You know, it's so
are
funny.
savage. And I mean, like, even like Doc's on point with this whole Inanna thing. And like, she even wanted him, one of the texts I read talked about how Inanna or Ishtar wanted Gilgamesh to go up into the sky with her. And he was like, he declined because he's like, the men who go up in the sky with you never return. And I just think that that's so interesting when you see these kings like having some sort of veneration or relationship with this entity, Inanna, Ishtar, Aphrodite, whatever name she goes by. She goes by different names, you know. And like, I don't want to rehash something that I just talked about on a podcast elsewhere, but I did just cover a story where there's some of Nebuchadnezzar's old writings where he's talking about his love for Ishtar and how his Ishtar would come to his wife in a dream and give them messages, like messages for the kingdom. And beyond that, even like he was trying to work with her in a way to where he would get, he would deify. Like he didn't want to die like a mortal. He wanted to deify. And Nimrod comes to mind there, right? Is that the right one, Doc? Became a Gibberine.
Yeah. In the book of Genesis, it says that Nimrod becomes a Gibborim.
Right, deify.
A lot of
it's
people
like
tie in with Gilgamesh, and that's the whole thing. Is like when Inanna was so impressed, they just killed Humbaba, this monster of the forest of what was it next to Mount Hermon. And they called it that mountain was the home of the Anunnaki, and according to the Bible, that's where the fallen angels came down was on Mount Hermon, and in that Gilgamesh story, they named that as the dwelling place of the Anunnaki. And then that's when she becomes so infatuated with him because they're these great heroes, and she wanted this manly man to be hers. And after he rejects her, that's when they take off on that other adventure. And like you had mentioned, he feared his mortality. He didn't want to die. So during that battle, she like curses Enkidu, his best friend, for slapping her in the face with that bull's thigh, and he ends up dying. But he comes back and he tells Gilgamesh, this place that I'm going to, you don't want to be here, brother. Do everything you can to not be here. So then he takes off on this other adventure to try to find, it's basically Noah, but I can't remember their version, what they called him now. But he goes on this journey and goes into basically
Sutra, something like that starts with Z Sutra. Yeah, I can never say it right.
I think you're right. Yeah. And Atrahasis is another one, but they go find him.
Another one, yep.
And he's like, I'm seeking eternal life. I want to be like you. And basically he just tells him, you've come all this way for nothing. You can't have eternal life. And he forces him to go to sleep. And then basically Noah's wife pleads with him. It's like, he come all this way. You're just going to send him away without helping him, and kind of guilt trips him. So once Gilgamesh wakes up, he tells him, there is one way. There's this certain flower that grows under the sea at this certain place. And if you can find this flower and ingest it, you will have not eternal life, but long life, a really, really long life. So he ties this boulder to his leg and throws himself in this sea and goes searching for this mystical flower, and he finds it. But then he comes back to the surface, and before he can even eat it, this great serpent sneaks up and eats the flower and steals it from him. And so then he's all in dismay that he lost his shot at long life. But you have that serpent imagery again, coming in, the sneaky serpent stealing eternal life from Gilgamesh.
Do you think these are like bedtime stories, or you think this is real?
I think it's all rooted in some truth. There's some kind of esoteric truth that's being passed through these entertaining, unforgettable stories.
Yeah, we got actually. Yeah, I think you nailed it right there, Doc. Esoteric stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something in there to be understood. There's some truth, if you can figure it out, for sure, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And that's another thing too, is like when you go to like the Bible and everybody wants to talk about, all these Sumerian stories and Babylonian stories, that they predate the Bible. So therefore they sound so similar because they just, basically stole their story, and rewrote it in their own version. And I'm guilty. Everybody has their, preconceived notions and faith base. Where I'm a Christian, I just tell people, nothing of the first is the best. If that's the case, we'd all be driving around in Ford Model Ts. So just because it's the first, don't make it the best. And as far as the biblical narrative is concerned,
I got a Chevy.
Ford found on road dead. But so I tell people, like, if you go with the biblical narrative, what does it say? It says that the angels left their first estate and traded their first estate and came down to earth and was kicked out of heaven. So according to the biblical narrative, the fallen angels was here first. So is it out of the question that you would get their version, their story first? And of course it's going to be distorted if it's coming from them. But that's just my standpoint on it, though.
Well, I agree with you. Obviously, you know how I feel about that kind of stuff. But just when you hear these stories that are repeated throughout all these different cultures, you start to wondering, like, what part of this actually happened? What part of this is like a bedtime story, a cautionary tale, or something like that? And how do you interweave like physical evidence with the mythology of a place? You know what I mean? Because it's like, if you look at the hieroglyphics and the stories that come out of Egypt, it's dog-headed beings and bird-headed beings and stuff like that. I tend to kind of think that was legit, and like they did have some beings walking around, but it's like, what part of it was dramatized and like what part of it was part of the mystery schools and stuff like that? What part of it is real? You know what I mean?
Man armies. You got the dog man armies.
Yeah.
Like from the Mummy Part 2. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Anubis and his family.
Anubis. Yeah.
And what was that guy's name? Benny? A lot of people won't be like Benny. They have the 100 necklaces of every single god and religion and claim every single one of them.
Oh my God, dude. I love that movie so much. I actually have been fascinated with this kind of stuff since I was a kid, and I would watch The Mummy on repeat and be like, I feel like this is the real, like, there's actual curses and like stuff from in Egypt. That's, they talk about it like, oh, it's like a story. It's supposed to symbolize this. And it's like, no, I think they had stargates. I think they had advanced technology. I think that they had electricity in some form. So it makes
the Baghdad battery.
Right. Well, I mean, it makes you wonder what part of like the Atlantis lore fits into all of this and is real. That these were just satellite cities with giants and elongated skull beings that were break-offs from one civilization, like the mothership. Like, was it Atlantean, and then they all just kind of like did their own shit, and then there was like a catastrophe that wiped it out? I don't know.
Yeah, I always thought that Atlantis was like an allegory for basically the Great Reset, the flood story. And that's one of those universal things. You go to India, it says that, was his name Krishna? I think, or maybe, I can't remember. It's the blue skin god, but he shows up as a fish and tells this, it might be, but he shows up as this, fish to this righteous man, and he calls his name Manu, which, stands for, or means man, first man, and warns him of this great catastrophe, and the world is going to be destroyed with a flood, to build this boat. And they build this boat, and he basically ties a lasso around the fish, and he drags him to safety and places him on top of a mountain. And you have the same story with Noah. You have the same story like we just talked about with the Babylonian and Sumerian, the Atrahasis. You go to the Native Americans in North America, they talk about a great flood coming and the gods preserving a remnant. Go to South America. It says Viracocha, in his first creation, that he created giants, and that the giants devoured the land and the inhabitants of the land, that they were wicked. So what does he do? He brings a flood to destroy the earth. And the first thing, the remnant that survived, the giants worked with the people, and they build this great tower in the air to evade a future potential flooding. So, I mean, the Tower of Babel. So you just have all these stories. And like you'd mentioned, Julie, I'm the type of person, I'm not a coincidence theorist. I love comparative mythology. I like to look at all these stories. And if we have all these same stories around the world, there has to be something to it. And so I just try to look for the common themes. And a lot of times we see caveats added or names changed. Those are just, you can add that to their cultural spin. But the common themes where they're all the same, I think those are rooted in truth.
And lucky for us, there's physical evidence of a lot of this. Physical evidence, water erosion on the Sphinx in Egypt. Physical evidence that the Grand Canyon was hollowed out by water. And that the Native Americans hid in the caves. And they talk about that. On the top of Mount Everest. There were people that... Right. So this is what I'm saying. Like, you can't say they're all bedtime stories because there's an aspect that can be spiritual, but there's an aspect that has to be literal because there is physical evidence. And then you start mixing the skeletons in, giant skeletons and elongated skulls and stuff with the water erosion on the Sphinx and with the Grand Canyon and the seashells on Mount Everest. And then you're like, all right, what part of these stories is literal?
We have the seashells in East Tennessee too, just to sprinkle in the Tennessee mountains. They're finding old ancient like seashells and just sea stuff in general. Yeah, there was an ocean here at one point, and I'm kind of leaning with Doc on this one. It's like you get one or two flood myths. My personal opinion is like maybe that's a coincidence, but once you get 40 flood myths, I'm starting to think that there was a deluge of some sort of a catastrophe with lots of water.
Yeah, that's interesting because I actually talk about that a lot. When I explain it like this, the reason why we have so many flood stories is because every civilization started by a body of water. And eventually during that time frame, whether it's our lifetime, our children's lifetime, our grandkids' lifetime, there's going to be a major flood that pushes somebody away from that land. And then they have to redo everything from the beginning. So I feel like most of these flood stories, they're very similar because in most cases, the ancient people, they have boats like we have cars today. Their transportation from one place to another or getting food in a, mass production way was by using boats. So I look at it as, since every civilization started by a body of water and we need body of water to survive, there's always going to be some type of flood story. And now that because we're mostly certain religions like Christianity, Muslims, and so on and so forth, those big Abrahamic faiths, they're all combining that one flood story. Like he was talking about the Sumerians, the Sumerians have their flood story, the Akkadians have their flood story, the Syrians, Hittites, and so on and so forth. And then you even have the Mesoamericans.
Yep. Yeah, that's one of those things. It's like a lot of people want to talk about isolationism. All these ancient people, they all just stayed in their little square piece of pasture and didn't trade or communicate with all these other countries. I think we have so much evidence that the ancients were diffusionists. They were sailing the seas. They were going to North America, mining this copper, coming back and bringing it back to the other parts of the world. I think the Phoenicians were basically fueling the Bronze Age. And if you go to Michigan up there, I can't remember that name, but it's right there on the border of Michigan and Canada, but they find these huge copper mines, and they've estimated it's like hundreds of thousands of pounds of copper that is missing. And that Michigan copper is the purest copper in the world. It tests at like 98.8% purity. So when they find copper that tests that high, they know it come from that Lake Michigan area because it's the purest in the world. It's the only one that tests that high. But they're finding copper that tests that pure in Europe, in South Asia, in Africa, the Middle East, Peru. They're finding it everywhere. And I believe it's because these ancient Phoenicians, these giants, when the waterways were higher, they could sail straight across. Because if you follow the currents and the tides, you can take a boat with no sails, no paddles, and just drift. And there's what's his name? A Scandinavian doctor. I can't remember his name now. I think it's Thor or something. But he actually tested this. He got on a raft, and the currents naturally took him to North America. So if you had these Phoenicians that were known seafaring people and the water levels were higher, they could go toward like the Massachusetts area, and they say that this was all a waterway that led straight into Lake Michigan and all these lakes, and that's where they were mining all this copper. And this land, was very fertile and fruitful and had all kinds of natural resources. So from there, that's why you get all the mound structures and things down through the Ohio River Valley, and you find all these giants in the Ohio River Valley because these Phoenicians started setting up shop and just started going down the Ohio River Valley down through there.
It's Isle Royal in the Great Lakes. And I was looking up, Doc. I was trying to see how many tons of copper are missing. That's a number that kind of sways, but one of the numbers that came up here is an estimated 500,000 tons of copper is missing.
Yeah, I said pounds. It's tons.
It's tons. Yeah.
Yeah. And they even find a pictograph there on that island on this huge stone. It's a Phoenician ship carved into the rock. And it's unmistakable. So they even put their stamp on it.
You've got the Canaanite shipwreck too. Anybody could look that up. It's a more recent find. If you just put in Canaanite shipwreck, it'll come up. It was 3,300 years old.
That's wild.
And I'm connecting that with the Phoenicians, because the Canaanites and Phoenicians were basically the same group.
Yeah. Yeah, just a different name for them.
Mm-hmm.
But not to throw us off from this, but I was wanting to show you guys this. This is like the final thing I was going to talk about with those elongated skulls, because I've talked about all the different variants and sizes and all that kind of stuff. But this right here is, if any of the stuff I talked about today had you, saying, I'm not sure if it's genetic or not, this should be the final nail in the coffin for you. In 1842, in a cave, they found an elongated skull, or skeleton rather, full skeleton, and it was mummified. And when they started investigating and taking it apart and looking inside, and it was a female, inside of this female's belly was an elongated skull baby, still in the womb, unborn. So did they do some surgery and cut it out and elongate the skull and then put it back in the womb?
This is what I'm talking about with the Prometheus stuff.
I wonder if that's Tyrone. Is that the same thing?
Living in an alien movie. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I interrupted you. Yeah, Prometheus. You talking about like oh my God, yeah, the alien movie Prometheus. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, the alien movie Prometheus.
That's interesting.
But this was in 1842, and it's actually got drawings and stuff, but I'll read like some little excerpts here. It was, and this was in a journal that they had found from some of these explorers. And this was so predominant that even there was a papalistic bull in the 16th century by the Pope forbidding the elongation of skulls, because they were still doing it back in the 16th century. But it says here, as it was only a few years since 2 mummies of children were carried to England, which according to the very exact description of Dr. Bellamy belonged to the tribe of Angimares, if I'm saying that correctly. But it says the 2 crania, both of the children, were scarce a year old, and this is all they found in this cave. It said in all aspects the same form as those of the adults. We ourselves have observed the same fact in many mummies of children of tender age, who, although they had cloths about them, were yet without any vestige or appearance of pressure on the cranium. More still, the same formation of head presents itself in children yet unborn. And the truth, we have had convincing proof in the sight of a fetus enclosed in a womb of a mummy of a pregnant woman, which we found in a cave in Hyake, 2 leagues from Tamar, and which is at this moment in our collection. Professor Diotpont, from the great celebrity in the Department of Abstructures, has assured us that this fetus is one of 7 months age, and belongs to, according to the very clearly formation of the cranium, to the tribe of Honkas. But they have a drawing here of this guy.
Dude, it literally looks like something from Alien Covenant.
Oh, yeah.
See, one thing that I
is
do like
wild.
about you is you do the same thing that I like to do. What I noticed about you is when you pulled that first book out is I use little tabs also in my books. I have a lot. I actually buy them on on Amazon by the thousands, right? And I got them like you do right here. And I like to do is when I'm talking about something, I like to have a book in front of me. I do the same exact thing. I don't know how to put it, but I really do appreciate that, because a lot of people, when they do it off the top of their head. And I know they memorized it, but you're like me, you can't remember it that easy. So you have to go back to the source, and you want to show people what you actually see. Now, whenever I say something, when I show it in a book, I'm just telling you, hey, this is my evidence. I'm not saying that this is fact. I'm not saying this is fiction. What I'm saying is somebody took the time to record this to give us this information. So at the bare minimum, we should take the time to research and go deeper in it. And I can tell you, one of the books that I do the most on, because I'm going over one of these books, is I show you, I'm serious when I say I'm like you with these tabs. So I really do appreciate that, because a lot of people really don't do that.
That's the signs of a true researcher, man, which I got a pretty good memory, and I can get probably 80% of the story right. But I want to try to get close to 100 as I can. And also, too, anybody can make something up and tell you something. And I might as well be from Missouri. You know, I'm like, show me. I'm from the show me.
Yeah, that's
state.
what I'm saying. That's
So it's
how,
like,
that's
I want
what
to show
I
you.
Yeah, and when you pulling out the book and you're showing your evidence, you're saying that, hey, this is what I read. I took the time to read this book. How can anybody sit there and say you're wrong if they haven't read the same information you presented, right? Because you thoroughly went through it. You even highlighted. I noticed you even highlight some of the stuff that you're doing there, and I do the same thing when it's like double or triple important. I'm like, yeah, I got to put a mark on here because this is very important. I actually have a series on my YouTube, what I've learned from reading this book, and I actually do what you just do. I go through page and show what I've read and do a little review. So yeah, I'm liking this. This is good. I just had to say that.
No, thank you, man. Yeah, that's the thing too, is when you have a podcast, you read all these books, you like I said, you might remember a high percentage of it, but to me, I think it's important to put the tabs in there and highlight it. And then when I go to do a podcast on a certain show, I know what certain books I need. When I pull them out, I got quick references.
Oh, well, if you get that wrong, people online will definitely let you know. I'll tell you that much. Especially in like YouTube comments. You know, if you're not, you could be like one day off on something. And you're fucked up. You're wrong. Everything's completely wrong. Wah.
Because most of the time they went into hidden in trot.
Well, you know what the best? You know, Mario from Symbolic Studies even pointed out. He's like, I love how like you get people that will like say you're wrong but never tell you what the correct answer is.
Yeah, I love Mario. I had him. I
was like, yo, that is a really good point. And unfortunately, he says that happens a lot on your channel. I was like, you're right. I was like, people will sit there and shit talk you and tell you you're wrong, but I never saw an answer. What's the answer? What's the right one? Oh, you don't even know either. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, but I do have a question.
Shout out to those haters. Sorry, I'll let you go, Tyrone. But man, shout out to B Kane, 11C. Love that guy. He thinks I don't like him. I like you, man. I like you, man. I love it when you talk crap about me.
I don't know who this is.
Sorry.
I was going to. No, that's cool. I was just going to ask, like, what does the DNA say when you researched it? Because I've heard different things, but what does the DNA say to you, or how do you interpret it?
Well, according to this, like I said, LA had done the DNA testing and all that stuff, and which he's got it in here in this book, but it's a lot of big languages and stuff, letters that I have trouble understanding. But according to his breakdown, because in here in this book, he talks about, this Y certain number strand was found at such and such percent, and this strand X number such and such was found at this percentage. And what he said is basically it's a mix of European and Middle Eastern descent, but it's more predominant in Middle Eastern. So LA's theory is, and he's a Christian, so he comes from a Christian paradigm. Him and Fritz Zimmerman formed this idea that when the Israelites came out of Egypt in Exodus and they come back into the Holy Land, a lot of people that's not familiar, they just see where God tells them to kill every man, woman, and child, that it's just mass genocide. But if you actually do the research and study the genealogies and the names of these tribes, all the ones that God commanded them to kill every man, woman, and child were Nephilim giant clans. So he says that he believes, what you got there? The Everything Bible?
Yeah, this is. I was just reading this. What you're talking about, like the genealogy, it actually has this in here. I have another one.
Yeah. A lot of people just, I mean, I was one of them too, thinks it's boring and they just kind of skim over it, but it's there for a reason. And he says that when they started conquering all these giant tribes, these were, another name for them, as Tim said, was the Phoenicians, and the Canaanites, and they were known as great seafaring people. So Fritz in LA had come to the theory that the ones that were smart and heard about all the other giant clans getting wiped out, that there was a great diaspora, that a bunch of them fled north into Europe in the Caucasus Mountains and Sardinia and all these other places. And then another remnant got on this boat and went out to North America and settled into the great Ohio River Valley region and done the copper mining and stuff like I mentioned earlier, and that they just moved their way south and went down into Peru. That was his theory. And to me, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. But like I said, I mean, I have my predispositions.
Yeah, you've got the Phoenician Iberian artifact showing up in Mounds in West Virginia, Ohio Valley,
Was it New Hampshire, the America Stonehenge? The professor from Harvard, Barry Fell, they found this stone, and they call it the Beltane stone is what they've named it now. But the guy that owns the place, I think his name was Roger Stone, found this huge stone tablet with all this writing on it that he couldn't decipher, and nobody could. And so he was taking pictures of it and sending it to all these universities and professors trying to figure out, what kind of writing was it? What did it say? And Barry Fell from Harvard responded and said he thinks he knows what it is, but he wanted to examine it in person. So he went up to New Hampshire and looked at them and deciphered the thing. And he told him, he said, this is ancient Phoenician script. And it says, we, the Canaanites, dedicate this site to Baal. And so that was a pretty big paradigm buster. And then also with their whole diffusion narrative, I think they said it was next to the Gates of Hercules up there that they found pillars, and there was ancient Phoenician script on it too. And it had said that we Canaanites have been forced into this land because we've been pushed out of our home by Joshua and Caleb, the robbers. So they were even documenting, they were run out by Joshua and Caleb, and they were forced to go to these other lands.
It's almost if too there was, and I mean, I've seen all that. I agree with all that. In fact, you're shedding light on a couple things that I didn't even know there. That's awesome. But there's also evidence of these other cultures from the Middle East as well. So it's almost as if this copper trade turned this into a commerce hub that brought in people from all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've got, the Egyptian stuff, the Hebrew stuff. Barry Fell, you mentioned him. I've got one of his books. In fact, you actually told me to get it, Doc, and I got it. And that book is full of stuff that you'll never hear about in a history class, in an American history class. Chock full.
Yeah, and this ain't no big dummy either. I mean, this is a Harvard professor, but he takes the standpoint of diffusionism.
America is a true old world, man. There you go. The new world was built on the old world.
And one thing that I found too with the LA that I'd never seen before, and you know how it is, you can read something or see something a million times, and it takes someone else with an outside perspective to show you something that's been in front of your face the whole time. But he had mentioned in his book that there's even commandments in the Bible condemning the practice of elongating heads. So, we find the elongated heads, down there in the Middle East, but then it also ties them in with these giants. And the book of Leviticus, there's commandments that kind of got muddied up in the English translation. But when you go back to the original languages, it tells you that you are condemned and commanded not to encircle the rounds of your head. And that's Leviticus chapter 19 and verse 27. In the English, it says, "Ye shall not round the corners of your heads, neither shalt thou mar the corners of thy beard. Ye shall not make any cuttings in your flesh for the dead." And when you go down, he's got all the different word translations and the Strong's references and all that. And I'll spare you all that. You can look that up on your own if you don't believe me. But the word in Hebrew for nakaf means to surround or to encircle. And it says elsewhere, this same Hebrew word is translated to compass 7 other times, to go round about 3 times, or go about 2 times, and compass about 2 times. So this word is related to the Hebrew word nakaf, which means to encircle with rope. So basically, when you take these translations of the Hebrew and put them in rope, the substitution would be, "You shall not round the corners of your heads." However, based upon the information contained in the preceding paragraphs, they could also be translated, "Ye shall not surround or encircle the extremities of your head." So he was saying to him, it sounds just a lot like head binding.
It does sound a lot like head binding.
Because the alternative is to cut your hair in a yarmulke.
Right. That is really fascinating to me.
I wonder if
because it's idolatry, right?
Well, yeah, you're
the
venerating.
Head binding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if the skull caps have something to do with this, that go back to this in any kind of a way. Because I don't know much about this, but I've heard that like people used to actually put real skulls on the top of their skull. Like the skull cap that the religious people wear. I don't remember what religion.
The
I'm
yarmulke.
sorry. Yeah. So those things used to be, at one point, I've read that those things were the real cutout parts of a skull. And it symbolized in some type of way, like taking that person's knowledge and like putting it into your mind.
I don't know. I've never heard anything like that. That's my first time hearing that.
Yeah. This was all wrapped up in some stuff that I was looking into, just to do with the skull in general, and like ancestral bloodlines and stuff like that. And like the priest kings that we were talking about earlier. Well, some of these guys, even the Sumerians, I think some of the royal families today, or royal families in recent day, trace their lineage back to some of the old gods, right?
Oh yeah, the serpent seed, the dragon court.
Yes. And what you'll see in a lot of castles and royal houses across the land is paintings of a woman holding a skull. And the skull represents their ancestors and what they believe to be a pure bloodline. And it's a bloodline that comes through the mother, not the father. And it's associated with their divine right to rule, the divine right of kings. But it all goes back to this bloodline. And so there's all this crazy stuff with the skull, So it's chock full of symbolism.
Yeah, the whole veneration thing in the dragon court, I talk about that in the book. And I recently had a conversation with Gary Wayne, and we talked about that. And also Nicholas de Vere's book, The Dragon Legacy. And they all traced their lineage back basically to Cain. And Cain was the serpent seed, and they called themselves the dragon court. And they were basically screwed out of their birthright. And they have the divine right to rule. And what's crazy is even Nicholas de Vere, he's from the de Vere family. That's one of the elite families too. They claim to be from the dragon court. but he talks about the predominant lines of these people were red hair, blue-eyed, or wait a minute, I got that backwards. Blonde hair, blue-eyed, or red-haired, green-eyed. And these are where you get all your story. All your stories of the fairies and the elven race and all this kind of Lord of the Rings stuff, that they are esoterically talking about this dragon court.
But it's kind of like what I was saying earlier. What part of it is the truth and what part of it is a bedtime story? The Lord of the Rings stuff, I believe, is based. It's like a story trying to tell a true story, and like all the different races are different bloodlines, and it's like, were they really fairies like Tinkerbell, or what are they trying to show a bloodline thing? You know what I mean? Like the fairy bloodline, the dragon bloodline, this, that. It's like somebody put in the comments, I love Gary Wayne. I do too. Worked with him several times. Sounds like you have too. And that's kind of like what he says. It's like blood types, bloodlines, and then they create characters to represent those different things.
Yeah, 100%. And I actually did a show with him a while back. It's actually my most popular video. It's got like 40,000 views or something. But we actually did an entire show on the esoteric meanings of the Lord of the Rings. And one of the things he talked about, he showed all those examples like you were talking about. But one that really blew my mind, and you could see it in the episode. I'm like, holy shit, I've never thought of that. But he was talking about at the end. He said, think about this. He said, you had the elven race. He said, they were almost like godlike. He said, you can consider them like the watchers, the fallen angels that were lording over and watching over humanity, right? And kind of guiding their path. He said, and then when stuff hits the fan, they want to leave and escape. And he said, go to this other place to avoid judgment and war and all this stuff. He said, but they talk about this king, that he was a human and he was like a foundling. And they were trying to raise him up. And they finally, defeated the evil, handed over the kingship to this human race. And at the end, Gandalf, what's that other, the Hobbit, Frodo, and all those different people and the elves are getting on this golden boat. And he grabs his hand, they walk off and get on this boat together, and then they sail off, into the unknown and fade out of sight. He said that's allegorically the flood, the judgment of God. He said, because you have the fallen angels that came down, intermingled with humanity, gave them powers and special technology. He said, and then they sailed off and left to try to avoid judgment of the flood. And he said, even at the end, what do they say? That Gandalf and the elves are leaving. They're trying to beg them to stay. And he says, no, this is the time for man. So their time of rule is over. Now the dominion has been given to humanity. And that kind of blew my mind.
It's spot on. What do you think about like the mummy with the fetus? What happens to those things? Like, do they get put in a museum somewhere where people can go and look at it, or do they get like confiscated?
Yeah,
like,
this one got confiscated because where is it at? It says right here, as it is only a few years since 2 mummies of children were carried to England. And they just disappeared after that.
I knew it. Because I was waiting for you to say like, oh, it's in this museum and it's like dehydrated like a Cheeto puff and you can go and see this thing. But no, it's always the ones that are super interesting like that. They always get confiscated and then you never see them again.
Yeah, they either get destroyed or they get put in somebody's private collection, some rich person's private collection.
Or
somebody in the
more than likely, I was going to say, or government.
Vatican comes to mind.
Ooh, yeah, Tim, for
And
sure.
honestly, Heather Arnold, I told you about, we were going to go look at that elongated skull that she knew of an actual person that had it in his collection. She went to check on it, and it had got confiscated and taken from the owner. And I think she said it was the Dutch. The Dutch is the ones that rule over the island of Aruba. And she said, well, she said, I had some friends that was wanting to investigate this and was wanting to do DNA testing and stuff. When are you going to get it back, or where did it go? And they told her that some scientists from Rome got it, and they were going to do the DNA testing. And that's like the Vatican, man. The Vatican.
For sure. Where did they get it from? Where did they find it? Aruba? Okay, so they found it on their own, and then somebody found out about it and came and got it from Rome.
Yeah, the scientists from Rome got it and wanted to DNA test it.
Yeah.
Well, when I first jumped on, I think I heard you guys talking something about Spanish and maybe Aztecs or Mayans. Maybe I'm making all that up, but what's interesting with that is I was looking into the Brewer's Cave, and I think that's Utah, and there's a lot of great lore around that. It's a very wild story.
Red-haired giants and blonde. It was a red-haired king and a blonde-headed queen.
Yes, and I just ordered a book from a guy who went in there with John Brewer and saw that, and he has sketches in the book. I've seen some of the sketches, and it looks like the giant king looks Mongolian in the face, but it has red hair. Yeah. And I was thinking, like, maybe there's something to like some of these Tartarian Mongols actually being over here, but his chest plate looks like Knights Templar. So it's like, what's really going on here? Well, people in that area believe that the Spanish came in and got rid of all those people that were the giants that were living there, including, I think, like Aztecs or Mayans as well. And that all that stuff got taken by the Spanish and turned over to the Vatican. So if that's the case, that's a conspiracy that goes back to the 1500s.
Yeah, I did an interview a while back with Terry Carter, and he's got a YouTube channel called Terry Carter, the Treasure Hunter. And he's the way everybody says, he's the leading expert on Brewer's Cave. And I did an interview with him, and he talked about some of the eyewitness testimony and stuff like that. And he was of the opinion that, you know, if we're being honest, either it's real or it was a made up, you know, facade. But he said, if it was real, he said, the way the story goes is Brewer found all this stuff and started telling people about it. And he got into contact with the Mormon church and some kind of college that was interlinked with the Mormon church.
Brigham Young,
and they were going to go look at this and investigate it. But then that college or somebody from that college printed into the newspaper about him, talking crap, saying that he was a crazy man and saying this and that. And then all of a sudden he changed his mind and he wasn't going to show them. And some people asked for artifacts, and he gave them fake artifacts. But Brewer claimed in his diary and to his family that he had give real artifacts to a couple of his friends, and that they stole them and never gave them back. And there was copper tablets, all kinds of stuff. So like basically he was claiming that he forged some of these artifacts to protect the real ones, because he'd had some taken from him that were going to be examined or whatever, and they stole them. And the story goes is, to keep from anyone from finding it, he went back and dynamited the entrance so no one could go in, and digged like some kind of little back channel cave hidden entrance to get in there, and that only like his son or something knew about it. And it was like during all this stuff that was going on, someone even kidnapped the son and killed him, trying to pry this information of this cave from him. It's a pretty wild story, man. A lot of twists and turns, and it gets confusing really fast, but it's a wild story.
Yeah, it does get confusing. But like one of the versions of the story that I'm kind of looking into is this guy, before the controversy starts to surround John Brewer, before he gets involved with the Mormons, before he gets painted as a hoax, he found the cave and took some people up there. And so some of those people have gone in there and, you know, like I said, they've written a book or included some of it in a book. Well, this guy who went in there allegedly says that what caught his eye, like they had boxes of stuff laying around, right? And he said John was taking a crowbar, smashing open the boxes, and he had to tell him, man, hey, don't do that. We got to open these things carefully with gloves and stuff. And he said he got real specific. He was like, what caught my eye was these little pieces of metal where they were doing electroplating. And it's some sort of an art of engraving metals like copper to preserve it or something. I'm not sure, but I was like, man, that's really specific. If this didn't exist, that's a really weird detail for somebody to kind of come up with, right? Electroplating, but the whole thing's interesting.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and just even there's just that whole region. And that's the thing about North America. We have so many regions like that. You can kind of just put a blindfold on and point to the map over here. And you're going to, if you look into that area, if you know where to look, you're probably going to find something that's ancient and, interesting, if not surrounded in controversy as well.
Yeah, that's a thing too. Like Terry Carter, he's from that area out there in Utah. And he's got, like I said, he's got a whole channel called, the Treasure Hunter. And because there's so much stuff over there, you have the Native American stuff, you have the giants, you have the conquistadors that come up there and melted down gold and silver and supposedly hid them in some of these caves and, hid treasure. And they've actually found it, with the Spanish markings on it and stuff. Some of these treasure hunters, all kinds of lore about them leaving treasure maps and guides like written on stone walls out there in the desert, like a treasure map, like the Goonies, and it's supposedly leading to these gold and silver, stashes and stuff. There's just all kinds of stuff like that out there. And like I said, there's so much of it that he has a whole YouTube channel on it and has all kinds of friends that are all treasure hunters and finding treasure and these ancient scripts carved on the side of stones and stuff. And I think it's every year. I can't remember the name of the get together, but every year out there he has like a treasure hunter get together. And some of the videos are pretty cool. All these treasure hunters just get together and they have bonfires and cookouts and they just record it and they tell all their stories and bring some of their treasures and show it off. They found, like I said, Spanish gold, Spanish armor, just all kinds of crazy stuff, which I'm fascinated by that kind of stuff because I grew up watching Indiana Jones and I get to live vicariously through some of these guys.
Yeah. Doc, you got to hold something. I saw you made a post about it, and I think it's a spear.
Oh, yeah, the giant spear. Yeah. Chief Joseph Riverwind. He has a giant bronze spear that's it's probably 3 or 4 foot long and weighs like 26 pounds. And it goes on the end of like a 8-foot pole. And this is just the spear head. And it goes with all the legends of the Native Americans about the Sitka and the stone skin giants. And they said they had these spears that the blades were so long that they could basically skewer the natives. So as they were running and trying to get away, they could basically skewer like 3 Indians on one of these blades. But he had got in contact with the guy that found that in the Michigan area up there where all that copper mine stuff was. And the guy found it, and they thought originally that it was a sword. And then Joseph got to looking at it. It's like, no, this is a spearhead, and showed him. And the guy was, I can't remember if he was military or if he was like going for some kind of work, but either way, he was leaving the country. And so he gifted it to Chief Joseph. And he actually cut into it and had the metal work done on it. And I did a show with him too, and I actually did that in person. And he brought that, and I got to hold it and look at it. But he brought the metallurgy tests with him and read them on that interview that I did with him. And basically, long story short, they found all kinds of different stuff, but basically it traced back to the Middle East. So this was probably a weapon that a Phoenician giant, like I said, that maybe come and was mining this copper, lost his spear.
Because a normal man would not be using that as a spear.
No.
It's too big.
No, it was huge.
You ever think, like, because I heard you mention the Goonies, there are all these stories about giants and like all this treasure and stuff, and we all think that they were like amazing otherworldly beings, and they turn out to be a bunch of like sloth with, hey, you guys. Like, that would be the worst ending of this story. They were, but you hear that though, that there's some, like in the Bible, right? David and Goliath, and they're just like big useless idiots that just kind of like stomp around. And then there's the ones that are like highly intelligent that are responsible for these amazing works of architecture. And so it makes you wonder which ones the royal families are descended from, the sloth clan or like the real smart ones, like which. And I saw somebody in the chat say that blonde hair and blue eyes kind of like just popped up out of nowhere, that it was a weird recessive thing. And then the same with the red hair. So yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder, because not all of them were smart. Come on. Some of them had to be like sloth, especially with all the intermingling and the inbred weirdness. Yeah. Some of them had
smart
to be
people
like
and dumb people in every culture. Yeah,
right.
You got dumb and smart people, but like you said, that whole dragon lineage, the serpent seed lineage and stuff, DeVere talks about in his book that a lot of the New Age people that claim to be witches and all this kind of stuff and warlocks today, he said they're laughable. He said, yeah, they could have the perfect spells. They could have the perfect grimoires and do all the rituals exactly like the ancients did it. He said, but they're not going to get the same outcome because the power's in the blood. The elven races and these bloodsuckers, the Draculas and stuff that's been so sensationalized by Hollywood, those were real bloodlines and families and peoples. And they had the power in their blood, and they could actually do those things. And that as time went, they had Gary Wayne talks about it, they had like a reproduction problem, especially if they were giants. And so they basically just started intermingling, and it diluted the bloodline and tainted it. And it got so weak that they can't do the things that they used to do anymore. But to try to preserve that power and bloodline, that's when they started interbreeding and marrying brother and sister and breeding and doing, like, you get all these stories of the royals, trying to preserve that pedigree, that lineage. That's why they were trying to do that. But after so long, you just taint it so bad, you get all this interbreeding, and you get those, hey, you guys, in the mix. That's what happens.
Yeah, and if one comes out looking like sloth, they end up locking them up in like an asylum. You never hear about them. The royal family actually had a couple that they just kind of were like, yeah, put them in a home somewhere. That we up on that one. They had cleft lips, cleft palate. They had a lot of genetic abnormalities, because they were literally, and they say that the royal family, like, oh, Meghan Markle, they're not all bloodliners. She is a bloodliner though, because she's descended from Robert the Bruce. And then Diana's family, somehow, it wasn't like it was random. Like, you still had to be kind of in there in some way to be able to marry into the royal family. They've diluted it, quote unquote, but they're still chosen. All those people are chosen.
Yeah, was it King Charles? He said he drew his lineage back to Dracula.
Vlad, yeah.
And it talks about him drinking blood and stuff. And I talk about it in my book, the Epic of Esau. Esau marries into Nephilim giant clans and breeds with them. And from that union, you get Amalek, who births the Amalekite race. And when you go to the original etymology of that name, that means the blood lickers. So that all
shut the fuck up. Oh my God, I never knew that. Blood lickers.
Yeah.
Isn't there something, maybe you don't know, but if you do know, tell me if I'm right or wrong. The story of Elizabeth Bathory, that woman who killed all those women and like strung them up and like would bleed them out in bathtubs and like drink their blood and bathe in their blood. And she was supposed to like have killed hundreds and hundreds of young girls, brought them back to her castle, slaughtered them, bathed in their blood, drank their blood. She was a descendant from the royal family.
Yeah. Yeah, she was a royal. And in that story, too, it was the maids and the helpers were the ones that went to the towns and got these people.
Right. Yeah. Like,
and when they busted her, they even executed them for being accomplices. But if you remember that movie, I can't remember which one it was, but it was one of the Hostels. Remember the Hostel movies? They would take tourists.
I was going to bring that up. I was going to bring that up.
That woman that lay there and
in the tub,
the throats of the people in the tub. That's who they were depicting, I think, in that movie.
Okay, I got one for you. Melusine, right? So the royal family, the royal house of Luxembourg, they were originally Celts. They weren't landlocked. They moved from one of the coastal, but they landed in Luxembourg, right? They traced their lineage back to Melusine, who is the Little Mermaid, inspiration for that. And I think she's also the one on the Starbucks logo.
Yeah, I had somebody on the show cover that.
No.
So, yeah. And then if you look around, you see that bloodline pops up in other places like Crete, because there's another royal bloodline in Crete that traces their lineage back to Melusine. And she's like a siren goddess. So it's like some of these gods and goddesses may have been actually like real people or real royals at one point. Like even the Vlad. Yeah. I mean, I think Vlad. So King Charles traces his back to Vlad the Impaler of Romania, who Vlad traces his back to one of the Nephilim tribes. And he's even got the serpents on his tomb.
Yeah, the Tuatha De Danann.
Yeah. So yeah, and like his like tomb to this day, if you go in there and look, it's got dragons and serpents on it. So there's that association too.
Yeah. And you find it all in the Vatican too. Me and Gary was talking about that Nicholas de Vere book, The Dragon Legacy. De Vere was saying that when Constantine was trying to convert everybody to Christianity, and his whole thing put it under the Christianity umbrella, that you have these different lines, like Julie was talking about, of the dragon court. You know, you have the different families, but they're all kind of diverted and branched off of the main tree trunk. But there was a branch that was kind of like the low tier, the bottom feeders of the dragon family, and they called them the Tinkers. And the Tinkers were your bankers, your merchants, and your traders, things like that. And the Tinkers had weaseled their way into the hierarchy and was like right there at the right hand of Constantine. And the way the story goes is that when Constantine, on his deathbed, bequeathed all the power of the Roman government to the Vatican and the Pope. And so that's how, you know, the popes and the Catholic Church got so predominant, and they're basically like the rulers and kings ruling everything. Well, de Vere says that the actual dragon court, the high ones, were at the other side, and they were the ones in control. But the Tinkers weaseled their way in, and that Constantine's deathbed confession, the royals, the true royals, thinks that it was a huge lie and deception, that the Tinkers lied and said that it was given to them, because the Tinkers had weaseled their way into Constantine's court and into the Vatican. And that's why when you go to the Vatican today, all your crown moldings and stuff, you have all these serpents and dragon heads, and the main symposium looks like a serpent's head. That's why he says you have all that imagery in the Vatican, because that is where the dragon court and the Tinkers weaseled their way into the organization. They left their mark.
That's incredible to me, because I've talked about stuff like that before. All these big banking families and stuff, the Rothschilds, they all come from that serpent line.
Yeah, and that's what he said in that book. He said that's the reason why the world's in such now, because the Tinkers, the bottom feeders, weaseled in and took over control, And that's why the world is ruled by greed, and we're raping the land and pillaging the land, and everything is just all about money and greed and, and all this kind of stuff, is because the bottom feeders of the dragon family, the Tinkers, have taken over.
What if it goes back to the chaos dragon, the dragon from the beginning of time? What do you think about that, Doc?
I mean, it's kind of a muddy water, but I think that it all comes back to Satan, the original adversary, because he's described as the ancient twisting serpent. And a lot of people, when I bring that up, they're like, oh, well, there's so many other entities. It has to be, busted up into all these other different ones, because Satan was there at the garden. If he was the dragon, like Rahab and all the legends and stories, he should have been kicked out of heaven. But even way after, like in the book of Job, it says that God has his divine counsel, and Satan shows up and he's like, where have you been? I've been going to and fro on the earth. And he's like, oh, have you considered my servant Job? Basically, have you accused him or tested him? And he was like, he only worships you because you're so good to him. He has all this money and stuff. Let me do this and let me do that. He'll curse you. So it shows that long after the fall, Satan was still allowed a seat in the divine council. So it's like, maybe it was kind of like the legends of, like, they get the Norse legends of Loki. Loki was the troublemaker. He was kicked out of Valheim, or what was that called? I can't remember the name of the city now.
Valhalla.
Yeah, but he was kicked out of that and forced to live as an outcast. But on occasion, he was allowed to come in for like banquets and things like that. So
celebrations and stuff. Yep.
Yeah, so I think Loki is kind of like a different archetype of the Satan figure, because even in the legend, Ragnarok, it says that once Loki had done so much treacherous things that they chained him in a cave. And one of his children was a venomous serpent, and they chained his child above him. And that way the saliva and the venom was constantly dripping on him, and he couldn't break the chains. But his wife would sit there and try to give him water and wipe the poison away. But then when Ragnarok comes, he's released, and he wreaks havoc, and he works with the agents of chaos to overthrow his father.
It's interesting you say that, because I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers, but there's some apocrypha out there about Jesus. We know Jesus was missing from 12 to a certain age, right? And some of the apocrypha, he was a trickster. There's some sayings that he pushed one of his friends off a roof and resurrected him, or one of his friends fell off the roof and there's different stories about him performing mischievous things to some people, and parents getting upset at him, and he was ran away because he had abilities to do things that weren't seen normal. So he was also known as a trickster in the Apocrypha also.
Yeah, and that was in the Nag Hammadi text that they'd found, and that was all the Gnostic text. But yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It's crazy, right? Like how, and it's just amazing that when you bring that up to some people, because I grew up in a Catholic church, when you bring that up to some people, they don't want to believe you on that, but there's actually text that says that. And they always argue about the text being a forgery, but everything that comes from the Sumerians after that is usually, considered a forgery, because the Sumerians had a certain way of writing their stuff down and keeping it down. And that's just not saying that the Sumerians themselves were doing it. The language, the writing itself was carried forward even into the Akkadians, Babylonians, and so on and so forth. I actually have a Bible from 1873 that says the people of Sumer, Babylon, and Chaldea, they all are one and the same people. And I presented the page and everything. I took a picture of it. I do a video set on it. Like I said, what I've done reading these books, and I take pictures just like how you do things too. And it's actually in that Bible. And it's interesting that, they consider those three, what some people say different cultures, as one and the same.
I would say that there was a link between those three empires and a changing of hands. And definitely knowledge being passed down throughout the generations. throughout the empire lineage there, including Sumer, Chaldeans, Babylon. Direct links, man. I love that.
You know, it also in that same Bible, it says that the Pope of Rome and I'll go grab mine in a second. Just in a second, I'll go grab it. The Pope of Rome and Apollon and
1811.
All right, 7. I'm gonna grab mine real quick. Hold on.
Yeah, put it up again for us, sir.
Yeah, this thing is from 1811.
Oh, damn! Look at that.
And it's
Is
got
this
the
the
Apocrypha
Bible?
in it. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my
And it's,
God.
and it's even got letters in here that I found. Where's it at? 1781.
Whoa.
Yeah, this thing is really old.
Holy, that is cool as shit.
Yeah.
Here's mine right here, bro.
Oh shit! Yeah, let's get you. Let's get it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I got that one.
That is awesome.
Yeah, bro. 1873, bro. Like, bro. Clasps.
Are there
Yeah,
any?
just clasps.
Yeah, just
Are
like
there any
yeah.
major discrepancies?
That's what
Have
I'm
you
doing.
noticed?
That's why I'm going through mine right now. Because what a lot of people would say is that, and this is what I just heard. Let me grab it real quick. A lot of people that I says that the New Jerusalem Bible is the most accurate Bible. I have the study edition one. So what I'm doing slowly but surely is taking this one and taking my 1873 Bible and going through it. It's crazy because I've read at least 6 or 7 different versions of the Bible. I've also had the privilege and honor of talking to Jeff Benner, who's a Hebrew scholar who translated. He actually sent me 20 of his or 15 of his books. He has like 20 or 20 something books. And I can tell you there's minor, small discrepancies. One of them that I found is interesting is if you read the Greek Septuagint with the Apocrypha, it says Goliath is 4 cubits in a span. But if you read the King James Version, he's 6 cubits in a span. So the size difference, because we're talking about giants and stuff like that, the size difference would be different. So that's anywhere between 6 to 9 feet, respectively, give or take from both sides. And then you got, like I said, like the Apocrypha, you got the different books with like Jesus being a trickster, but those aren't in, certain texts. And then you have the Book of Enoch, which he was mentioning about. You have 3 different versions actually of the Book of Enoch. The first one, I believe, the first book, I think they call it, is the most accurate one, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. And then, if I'm not mistaken. And then, there's just so many different things. And then, like I just took a picture of some books that I about Jesus, the life of Jesus, and there's just a whole bunch of books outside of what they consider the Apocrypha, but the Apocrypha literally just means forbidden books. So there's just books that come from everywhere. I know that in this one right here, this Bible actually gives you a definition in the beginning of all the words that it means. I actually have in here, and I did a YouTube video on it where they mentioned the pyramids in here. So you know how a lot of people talk about, the pyramids aren't mentioning and they don't have a Hebrew word for it and stuff like that. What they do is actually some people will say that it was the Tower of Babel. And I'm not sure if Doc Brown, if you had any correlations with that.
No, I've not really looked into that deep, but honestly, I want to get that the second one I showed you that was like yours. The spine is really messed up, so when I open it and look through it, I'd be really careful.
Yeah, mine is like that
I want
too.
to get it restored. I talked to a guy. He said for $500 he'd restore it. So I want to get it restored that way I can actually use it, because that thing is amazing. I mean, yours looks identical to mine, so I'm sure it's the same. But it's got huge sections of it that is nothing but definitions, drawings of ancient coins, and all kinds of cool pictures and diagrams and maps and full color, like painted gold leaf images. Yep. And it has like the wax paper to separate the images and stuff. And it's just got all these bright colored images and stuff. It's a beautiful book with lots of information.
I'm actually, like I said, I'm going slowly through mine on my YouTube, because like you said, my binding is messed up too. So what I usually do is I get a little small blanket or a pillow and I put it up against it so the bind will stay where it's at, and I just slowly turn the pages. I have gloves and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm slowly trying to get it all on my YouTube. It's just a lot of information, and with the little amount of time that I have with everything that I want, it's really hard, but I'm definitely going to get back into it. I went through the definitions in the beginning because some of the definitions are in there and it's amazing. Like I said earlier, in my Bible, it actually says that the Pope of Rome and Satan are one and the same. And it's crazy that it says it in there. So, and I think Apollon is included in that list too. So it literally says that. I have it on my YouTube channel already, like I said. So, and I took a picture of it. And I probably could put it up on here. Matter of fact, I think I put it on Twitter. It should be on there. I'll pull it up in a second.
That Apollyon shows up in there, I think, in Revelations. But I mean, I was looking at, there was a lady on YouTube who was pulling out her old Bible, and it was from 1884, I think. And it like included an introduction paragraph talking about mound builders. And they said they were talking about the ancient race that made it to America.
Shut up, Tim.
Yes, and it was right there in this lady's Bible, and I don't even think she was trying to push any kind of a narrative. She was just like, "Oh, this is weird that this is in here," and you know, it kind of 1884 is when that Bible was dated to, and it kind of coincides with, I would suggest, the 1880 push by the government and like the science clubs to dismiss that very notion. So I was looking at it like this, like maybe this is like the origin story for this war of the narratives, where you have some people like pulling the giant bones out of the museums and trying to cover it all up. And then you have it written down in the Bible too, which is interesting because that became like a battle of the narratives, right? And I would say, in my opinion, historically, the Bible people were right, or whoever wrote that in the Bible in that introductory paragraph was right.
Well, think about it, Tim. It's like the same time when they decided that they were going to tell everybody and teach in like history class that the Native Americans built Serpent Mound and the Native Americans were responsible for the mounds in Louisiana and all these places. And it's like you go and you ask them and it's like, hey, how did you guys build all these really intricate mounds? And they're like, we didn't. Actually, they were here when we got here, but it's like, why can't we take their word for it? We asked the Native Americans, they said they didn't do it. So therefore,
they changed their story. You know, once they started doing this reappropriation act and they realized that they could get claims to lands and historic sites, they're like, oh yeah. We changed our mind.
Sure. We it's like, sure we did. We built it. We built it. But like Serpent Mound in particular, the stories are that it was there. The Native Americans moved into that area and it was already there. So, I mean, why can't we just take their word for it?
I think that it was excavated around that time in 1880 by Putnam. And
that's what said that.
Yeah. He was like associated with the Smithsonian and the Peabody. So it's like they sent their own people in there so they could have control of the situation, right? Because Putnam he said that they pulled 6 feet people out of Serpent Mound. Like that's what he documented. But then later it comes out that they were pulling out 7 foot or more.
Giants. Yeah, it was bigger than that. I went down there and I recorded, which I've done it like over a year ago. I've been trying to make a little documentary on it, but I talked to some of the locals and some natives, and check this out. You know how everybody thinks it's the serpent eating the egg? Well, the local natives, they say that when Putnam wrote down all his stuff, that it was totally different and that they reconstructed it to try to preserve it, but they lost some of the features. And so they said that this is what they believe that it originally was. It's a serpent eating a turtle.
Yeah, Turtle Island. That's what the natives call the Americas. It's Turtle Island.
It's Quasi-Cattle coming up from South America, devouring Turtle Island, North America.
Holy well, that's
why
I was just talking about that. Yeah, I was just talking about that about 2 weeks ago.
And here is a picture from that conical mound at Serpent Mound. And like you said, Tim, this was a 7-foot skeleton, but at the knees. It was missing its limbs from the knees down, and its hands were cut off. So did it have 6 fingers and 6 toes? I think it's a good possibility.
Yeah.
Oh, they took parts off. Oh my God.
So 7 foot at the knees.
Yep.
7 foot at the knee. Oh my God.
And I looked into the guy who put that picture out too, and it kind of seems legit. And I just looked it up. Frederick Ward Putnam, a Harvard University archaeologist, is known for his work at Serpent Mound, Ohio during the late 1880s. So
that's what I'm talking about.
That's when, in my research, that's when the big narrative shift was starting to be pushed, was 1880. They were our people over here, our people in government, like the Society of Cincinnati, the Cosmos Club, DC, all your power players in 1880 were being heavily influenced by the Royal Club across the pond, the British Royal Society, and this new science movement that was rising up. And it took over. It's like the serpent taking over North America. The science guys took over. And if you were in their way, anything that you had, any cool artifacts, out of place theories was in their way. Too bad. You're getting bulldozed, just like they bulldozed the Mounds in St. Louis to put the city down. I mean,
but see, the only thing that gets me is when you read the Book of Enoch, though, their giants are described as like skyscrapers. So that right there throws a whole little new theory out there for me to, try to figure out, because a lot of people will argue that they will say, forget the 7 foot, 8 foot, 9 foot giants. What about the ones in the Book of Enoch? What is your thoughts on that, Brown?
Honestly, I mean, at the same time, we don't know, because it says like so many 100 or 1,000 ells. We speculate what an ell is, but we truly don't know. I mean, it's an ancient measurement, but we don't know what an ell is. We can speculate and say what we think it is, but we honestly don't know. An ell could be 6 inches. It could be 2 inches. I mean, we don't know. It could be a foot. But one thing I do believe is that there's a distinct difference between the giants pre-flood and post-flood. And even the Bible distincts it, because they were called the giants, the mighty men of old, pre-flood. And then after the flood, they were known as the Rephaim. And I think even like you look at the evidence, like you can look through the archaeological records, like if you find a modern day eagle's head, modern day eagle head this big, but they find ancient eagle's heads in the fossil record that is this big. We have a modern turtle that's this big, but in the archaeological record, they find tortoises this big.
Yeah, I have a couple
on my the trees, the leaves, everything pre-flood was bigger, badder, stronger, and so were the people. And that
the architecture too, the doorways. Who is walking through there?
Huge,
you know what I'm saying? I mean, Nick, you know what I'm talking about. You see these cathedrals with like 50-foot archways. Like who is walking through there? Yeah.
Well, I was going to say the Gigantopithecus. Remember the primates that were giants that they talk about. Those are.
That's what I talk about in my book. Esau. He said he come out covered in hair from head to toe. And I tell people what we call a Bigfoot today. I think just back then they called a feral giant.
I did an article and said that the Bigfoot was Enkidu, because Enkidu was a species that was in the woods, and they sent a prostitute to go out there and get him to be a human-like individual. And now Gilgamesh, that's how eventually Gilgamesh and him had friendship. There's also actual text that actually said they had a romantic relationship too, Gilgamesh and Enkidu. I posted that up earlier on my Twitter account. It's I think if I'm not mistaken, it comes from either the electronic text corpus. Yeah, I think it comes from the electronic text corpus of Sumerian literature, where it talks about it.
Yeah, I theorize it in the book that Enkidu is the Babylonian / Sumerian version of Esau. because they're both covered in hair from head to toe. They're both in the image of
like
fertility
tresses.
gods, and they were both known as the mighty hunter. And the book of Jasher says that Esau and Nimrod battled to the death the supernatural garments from the Garden of God. And in the Hebrew version, their guy Esau wins and kills Nimrod, takes his head off. But then when you go to the Sumerian version, it says that at their battle that Nimrod defeats Enkidu. So it's like in my opinion, like an inversion. It's different cultures, versions, and they're spinning it to where their guy wins.
Yeah, yep.
And the Epic of Gilgamesh, they become best friends. Yeah, and they take off on all these epic adventures together.
Me and you think alike, man. Like, I'm not even joking, bro. Like, my guy, Journey Through the Origins of History, it actually went bestseller in Sumerian, Babylonian, and history and Mesopotamian history. And a lot of what you're saying is actually accurate to the point where I'm shocked that it's like we read almost the same type of books, because that's exactly what it says. They had, there's different versions and different translations. I always tell people, just because you read one translation doesn't mean that's the accurate one. Find the translation where somebody's arguing against that point and read their version and see which one can provide the evidence. And that's why I like what you did when you pulled out the book with those tabs, because I like to do that too. If I know what I'm talking about, I can go straight to that tab and be like, this is what it says. And if somebody says, go do your own research, it's like a slap in my face, because I literally have the research in my hand right now. So I want to know what, the other person talks about. I definitely added your book to my cart, because I do want to read it. You do.
Thanks,
I like the intelligence. I like the knowledge that you're sharing. I think what you're doing. Yeah. I'm already going to be on it, man. Like what I like to do is I like to.
Is it on Amazon?
Yeah,
it's on Amazon. Yep.
All right. I'm going to put it in my cart.
Nice. Thank you, guys.
Doc, did you see that comment in the side? It said WikiLeaks exposed Hillary Clinton's interest in Gilgamesh. Tomb.
Yeah, I didn't read that comment, but I know what they're talking about.
Really?
That to me is really interesting. You know what else? There is a picture of the Queen. Anybody can Google it, so you don't think I'm foolish. There was like a museum that opened, and it was like giant skeletons. And it's a picture of like the Queen with like a bunch of members of the royal, and she's like posing next to the big skull, and she's all like proud of it and stuff. It's like, oh, you're trying to say this is where you came from? Is that why you're so crazy looking?
That's like, the lady with the skull.
This is her great granddaddy.
Right. It's like she's all proud of it and like all admiring it. And it's like they know what's up. Like Hillary Clinton's all, getting up in Gilgamesh's tomb and all. I mean, it's crazy to me that how obvious it is,
When they dropped the word Nephilim in those documents, in the Clinton emails, I was like, oh, okay. So they know about this.
They know. Yeah, they know. Yeah. I was actually going to say, too, this is just not to side tangent or anything, but I moved to the Pacific Northwest about a year ago, and I had never seen the redwood trees, and I had never seen the mountains like there are in Oregon and California, and it's magnificent. Mm-hmm. But if you ever look at like what they call the Table Rock, because we drove by a bunch of it, and I was like, what the f is that? And Colby told me that it's the Table Rock. But if you really look at it, it looks like petrified megalithic tree stumps. And I think that, they have ways of explaining things so that you're not thinking that giant things like that existed. But to me, when I look at it, it's like looking at a mile across petrified tree stump. Yeah. And, when you see stuff like that, and even some of the redwood trees, they're like hundreds of feet across, and you're just staring at it like we live in like, I don't know what we live in, but there used to be giant things on this planet. Yeah, there had
flood, everything was larger, and a lot of people don't realize either. And I keep this for like show and tell, which I know is this video. You can't really see it or feel it or touch it, but this right here, it looks like a rock, right? and you can hear it. It's solid. It's a rock, but it's not a rock. Look closer. That is petrified
wood, right?
Wood.
Yeah.
You can see the rings. But to the untrained eye, this is a rock. It looks like a rock. It feels like a rock. Oh, it's a rock. But no, it's not. It's a petrified piece of tree. And if you look at these lines and striations,
yeah, for sure.
Devil's Tower and some of these other, mountains or plateaus that's got these striations and lines in it. I mean, I'm not a really smart guy, but I know 2 and 2 equals 4.
I'm with you. That's why I think all the legends about like gigantic creatures in the sea, like Nessie and like that, maybe Nessie itself is like fantastical, but I do believe that there were like huge serpents in the sea, huge. I mean, there have been documented accounts of people seeing weird in the ocean for hundreds of years. Aleister Crowley had
he had a house right by
an
Loch
estate.
Ness.
Yeah, he had an estate right on Loch Ness.
If that's the
And the sea creature is the only thing that would survive a worldwide flood. And,
right, but I mean,
we can't even explore the depths of the sea today. So, I mean, there's quite possibly some, prehistoric monsters in the deep that we just don't know about.
Well, I think that James Cameron, the director, I think he's an occultist. I don't care what anybody is. I think he's an occultist. Okay. All of his movies like Titanic, The Abyss, think about The Abyss. Okay. Mm-hmm. Just trying to tell you something, that there's something way deep down that we'll never be able to get to in the ocean. I mean, the movie Avatar, all that. I think he's definitely an occultist, but I think the next frontier or whatever is actually not space at all. I don't even know if I believe in space at this point. I think it's the oceans. I think that there'll probably be another catastrophic event, maybe not even in our lifetimes, but it's going to be like another flood that wipes us all out. And then like hundreds of years from now, it's like I said in another episode, people will be digging up Taco Bell sporks and being like, oh, look at this ancient technology. I wonder what they used it for. And it's like, it's literally a Taco Bell spork.
Here's a wizard's wand.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But I do think
it's like Lovecraft and the Cthulhu. And then there's like occultists. I was reading about this. There was a group of occultists from Chicago who were driving out to these lakes in Wisconsin to try and summon a lake monster inspired by Lovecraft's Cthulhu, because they believe that he was talking about some sort of a real thing, a real entity.
Yeah, dude, he could have been. That's what I'm saying, though. It's like they make it fantastical to the point where you think it's like a Disney movie, but it's really based on like The Little Mermaid, and like some of these stories have been turned into fairy tales, but they're actually based on like reality. And so, I don't know. I think that Earth goes through seasons or eras or cycles, and like we're due for one. And in a couple hundred years, they're going to be digging up and being like, "Oh, look at this thing!" And it's like, dude, it's a tampon. It's a tampon.
It might be sooner than that. You guys watching the news? I mean, my God, all the flooding that's going on, all the solar winds and flares that we're getting, all the earthquakes that's going on, volcanoes erupting. There's 80. It's the most ever recorded. There's 80 active volcanoes right now.
But if I were going to choose one, Doc, you can disagree. I would rather it be an ice age than to heat the earth up and have another flood, because the heat. I would rather never endure another summer again and just be like, oh my God, for the next 10 years, summer is like 70 degrees all season. Thank you.
Julia, you're related. You're related to the redheaded ice giants. It's in your blood.
Yeah,
I tell people all the time, I'd rather be cold than hot, because you can be butt naked and be burning up. You know, if you're cold, you
Yep.
can just put another layer on.
Yes. I could survive an ice age. I get 2 degrees too hot. I'm homicidal. I
Yeah, wanna
can't
rip
even
people's
deal
face
with
off.
life. Yeah. So if there's going to be another cataclysm, please God, an ice age. I would be down for an ice age. Yes.
I'm with you. I
She
keep
says,
my
the cold
place.
never bothered me anyway.
There you go. Which, by the way, Frozen is based on some of those bloodline stories that we were talking about. Elsa, blonde hair, blue eyed, right? Anna, green eyes, red hair. They come from a royal bloodline. They got magical powers. Just saying, if you look into Frozen, there is a lot of that bloodline story in the background going.
That's
if you think about it.
totally it. Like I don't watch Disney movies, but I'll see like Disney previews for these movies show up, and I'll watch, and it's like they're all like it's all stuff out of mythologies that I read or grimoires.
100, absolutely.
Yeah, all of them, and all these old entities, especially these Disney female goddesses, they resemble the goddesses of old. It's almost like it's just a retelling of the mythology.
Yeah, they all have
And
hints
the
of
Marvel
truth.
stuff. The Marvel stuff's got it bad. Like the new series that they're putting out, like on Disney Plus with like Loki and WandaVision about like the Scarlet Witch.
Yo, the
and all
WandaVision's
that
off
stuff.
the hook.
You know what I'm saying? And then they had Moon Knight, which is a lot of the Egyptian weirdness. And I think Marvel puts a lot, it compacts like Project Paperclip. They had a lot of 9/11 weirdness, like with the Iron Man movies. And so Disney's got, if you want to learn something about ancient history, go watch a Disney movie because it's got all of it in there.
Stan Lee and one of his big guys over at Marvel was Jack Kirby. And a lot of the stuff that they were working with, first of all, they were based in some of their stuff off of Howard Hughes, and Howard Hughes worked with like the CIA and special government projects. It gets real weird with Marvel.
Yeah, and just to show you like an example, they're constantly, all their superheroes are pulling from mythology and old gods, you know, from Norse, from the Egyptians. That Dark Knight guy, he was based on an Egyptian god. And check this out. I found this old comic book a while back that shows you they're constantly pulling from the Bible and stuff.
Oh, yeah, let me pull it up.
King
Is this
Og's
like
bed.
the what are they riding on, a fish or something?
Oh, the Great
like
Barge
a time
of the
travel
Sky.
machine.
Oh,
They're time
yeah.
traveling and they're stealing King Og's bed, the giant.
Og of Bashan.
Oh my God,
Yes.
yeah. And they got like
Wow.
they got like a clock with a ring around it, like Saturn, like
Yep.
yeah.
It's like a time travel boat.
One of the first Mickey Mouses had like some space traveler named Elon in it.
Wow.
So no predictive programming there.
King Og's bed.
Yeah,
Wow.
that was interesting. That
Yeah.
cover.
Well, they got to
Round
keep
up.
the stories going, and they can't come out and just tell people the stories anymore because they don't want people to get too hip on it. So they got to do it in increments, and then it's entertainment for people like that. That's why many people, such as myself, we watch the same shows over and over again. It's comfortable for us. Like me, I like to watch The Simpsons, and I can see a lot of correlations with The Simpsons and how they're telling stories and stuff like that. And it's just interesting that everything is going back to trying to tell us what we had before without just telling us that. They don't want to just give it to people. Sometimes they want people to go out there and do their due diligence and stop taking word from somebody else and going there and doing what you did. Like you found that petrified wood. Now you have knowledge on what to look for and all this other stuff. And like you said, to the amateur eye, somebody would just walk right past it and wouldn't even take a second look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This is just me. All right. This is just my opinion. But sometimes I get the feeling when I see like the previews for the Disney movies or the superhero movie of the week, or any of the movies coming out right now, even Lord of the Rings, it seems like, this is just me, but it seems like we have an ancestral memory of the way things used to be, and things used to be magical, just across the boards magical.
Yeah.
Where people used magic almost in their everyday life like it was nothing. Like all their books were esoteric. There were giants, there were little people, there were witches and elves and wizards, and it's just like, is that how it used to be? That's what I mean. It makes me wonder sometimes.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree with
said
you more.
it best. We're a species with amnesia.
Yes. Do you know how obsessed people, including myself, got with the Harry Potter books in movies? It's like you want to live in it, like you can't separate it from reality because it's like a dream you want to be a part of.
The Vampire Diaries and the Twilight series.
Oh my
Everybody got swept up in that.
I know a lot of people that do that with Star Wars. I even slipped into that at one point in my life. I was obsessed with reading Star Wars novels. I just got so sucked into, I liked it better than reality.
Well, that's why we do entertainment. We want to escape our daily lives. That's the whole point of entertainment.
But it's like Tim said, I think it's because we know like it should be different for us, but we're stuck in like this slave society that you work, you come home, you go to sleep, you eat, and there's nothing magical at all about it.
It's like an NPC,
like we're not having magical experiences every day like we could be having.
Yeah. And it's kind of like the hero's journey that I always talk about. You know, when you read all these hero archetypes, what is it? It's a foundling. It's someone of great importance, but they don't know who they are. They've forgotten who they are. But then this wise sage comes forward and calls them to adventure. But then they have to step into the unknown, and slay the dragon, rescue the damsel, and hoard up the treasure. I mean, that's the archetype of all these stories. And I tell people, from my point of view, as a Christian point of view, we are all on the hero's journey. And who are we that we've forgotten? We're children of God. And we've forgotten who we are. And just like you said, I think if we look at the pre-flood world and you read the Bible and all these other mythologies and stuff, there was giants, there was wizards, there was magic. This was a wild and crazy place, but it's no longer like that anymore. And like I agree with you, maybe all this entertainment and stories and novels are us, even if it's subconsciously looking back to a time that was like that.
And then I get real deep into this mound research, and I find that these people were pulling out, well, first of all, there were mummies everywhere over here. So freaking mummies in Kentucky. But also out of the mounds, they're pulling out magic wands, crystal balls, and other, shaman masks and all kinds of other magical stuff. So it's like, and then you got the giants and the little people. So it's like, maybe this straight up was Narnia, and we have a distant memory of it. Like Julia said, like things aren't how they should be because they're not how they used to be. And we remember that as a species.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned mummies because the Spirit Cave mummy is the oldest mummy in the Americas. So it's actually found in Nevada. So that's actually interesting you brought that up.
Yeah, man, I love the mummy stuff. There was such a mummy problem that they were. How's this go? It was something I read the other day that I was reading in like an old book from the 1800s, and they were talking about how there was a mummy crisis where all the mummies were being. So people would find a mummy, and then somebody would come in and steal their mummy so they could sell it to people over in Europe. So it's backwards. It's like you would think that we would be rich people over here would be buying Egyptian mummies. No, people over there were buying mummies from us. I was like, wow.
American mummies?
Yes.
Wow.
Straight up like what Tyrone's talking about. Yeah.
And they were Egyptians that was in the Grand Canyon that the government set up a base and were no longer allowed to go to.
Isn't
Just
that
saying.
wild?
Yeah. That's a lot of people. That's why a lot of people say that Americas is the Atlantis, because when the Ice Age came over, froze everything, went back to normal, and came over. The different times of the Ice Ages. They said that they found a lot of hieroglyphs out there and artifacts of Egyptians over there in the Grand Canyon. I've read that article, and I've also read articles that said that it's been debunked and this, that, and the third. But the thing is that they hide things so well from us. It's amazing. And then when you look at the sign symbols from Albert Church's book, Churchward's book, he talks about the Masonic signs and all that stuff. We had a discussion about that prior, in the past, Nick. But the signs is what makes it different. They have plenty of pictographic script here in the Americas. They have some that's from the Shang dynasty that came over here, So it's just interesting that we have this evidence here, but for some odd reason, they want to hide it. And I truly don't understand why they want to hide it, because I don't think it would even make a difference at this point. At this point, everybody already pretty much knows about some kind of idea about it, but whether it's fact or fiction is something that they're turning into facts when they sit here and hide it, take it, and destroy all the evidence and say they never had it in the first place.
Well, that would mean they'd have to admit to everybody that they've been through an MK program from elementary school through college, that we've been completely lied to about every aspect of human history. Because the same thing, like what you're talking about with like the giants going all the way back into time, it's documented throughout all cultures. The same with vampire lore, actually, too. China, going all the way back to the Garden of Eden with like Lilith, all that vampire lore. And people are obsessed with vampires. They literally have found bodies in China with the heads cut off, bound up bodies like with cinder blocks, weighing them down with inscriptions that said, came back to life and tried to eat my family, RIP, and then like the name of the person, going all the way back into time. It's in Native American culture. It's in Egypt, everywhere. And a lot of them were huge skeletons. Talking about rising back up out of the grave, snacking on people's family. So I'm just saying, it goes all the way back to the beginning of time, literally rising up out of the grave and having to be decapitated, which goes along with my theory on why sometimes you only find a skull. It could be part of an altar situation. A lot of folklore says that they would rise up after death and snack on people's family, and that they had to be decapitados. So that might be why you're only finding the skull and not the rest of the skeleton. I'm just saying. In China, they had a real problem with it. Apparently, they had cinder blocks on top of the graves. They had all this stuff. They had a name for it. And oddly enough, it kind of intertwines with the spirit that they held responsible for sleep paralysis. So just saying, there's like a hierarchy of weird entities, spirits that inhabited human bodies. And yeah, I mean, it's that's why, I'm pregnant right now. And when my kid comes home and they're like, oh, guess what I learned today? I'm going to say nothing. You learned zip. You learned zero, because it's all just lies. It's all lies.
Lilith was actually considered the first vampire, according to the Sumerians. According to Samuel Noah Kramer, he actually says in his book that she is the first vampire, or what is described as a vampire. He actually uses the word in his book.
I know it. It's crazy.
That might tie in with the Amalite bloodlickers that were brought up earlier. Malachites or whatever.
It's crazy because I know I talk about that a lot of times to a lot of people about how Lilith is the first vampire, because I actually like the movie Blade, and I actually learned that time frame when that movie came out. And the reason why I learned it, how I came to learning about it was I was watching a documentary on it, and I could never. And when I finally got the chance to buy Samuel Noah Kramer's book, and read it for myself, I was like, oh, okay, now it makes sense. And, you know, and I even tested it. I know a lot of people like to go to Grok and ChatGPT and look for their answers and stuff like that. So a lot of times what I like to do is take my books and see how accurate ChatGPT would be toward it. So I actually asked ChatGPT and Grok if Lilith is considered a vampire, and they'll say no, straight up no. But then I'll take a picture of the book, because you know you can take the picture of the book and send it to ChatGPT, and it'll analyze it, and it'll say, oh, okay, yeah, I see what you're talking about. I actually took a picture of the book and the paragraph that it said it from Samuel Noah Kramer, and it came back and said, I guess so. And I was just like, see, this, and that's what's going to hurt a lot of people in the future, is because people are going to get lazier and lazier. You know, back in the day when you Google something, you have to actually open up the article and read it for yourself. Now people are just grokking and ChatGPT and getting a very quick answer on it, and they're not getting all the information that they want. So when somebody says, has there been giants found in the Grand Canyon or artifacts in the Grand Canyon, they'll read that it's been debunked and this, that, and the third, and they won't really find any real hard sources unless they go in there and ask it, give me a source for this, give me a source for that, give me a peer-reviewed article on this, give me a peer-reviewed article on that, give me the esoteric version of it, and so on and so forth. A lot of people are going to skip all that hard work and just go straight to ChatGPT and Grok and get the easiest answer they possibly can get.
That's how Mandela effects happen too, because Google can just tell you anything. You can Google something and it can say, yeah, in 1992, this. And it's like, I know for a fact that is not true, even though Google says that it is.
Now, ChatGPT just gave me just spit out probably 2 pages about how Lilith has been considered a vampire.
You know what's so funny?
I'm just being serious. It just told me.
That's like constantly updating itself too. So it's all over the place.
And I'll explain this.
Oh, did you use the free one?
No. This is interesting, because I will actually tell ChatGPT, and I've looked at the terms and services. Once you tell it something and you can back it up, it keeps it in its memory bank for everybody. So like Tim says, it does update. And I know this for a fact, and I'll tell you the reason why. When I went to a local museum, I took a picture of a piece of paper about one of the slaves around here. And I went to go ChatGPT it, and it said that the information was incorrect on there. Now, I did this on a whole different account. And then I gave it the information. I showed the little paper and showed all the information that was on there. And it says, okay, it's going to update this thing. So I went on to a different account that had no correlations with anything on I asked it the same thing, and it gave the correct information after that. So I think a lot of times when you actually give it its sources, because I like to take pictures of the book and the pages or whatever it is I read it from, even video, it will even analyze videos. And it will say right there that in the terms of services, it does tell you in there that it updates it once it gets, verification on what you say. Now, this can be the Wikipedia thing. Can somebody prove something that refute your information, and ChatGPT has to decide which one is accurate and which one. And that's when you can go to some of the article, or sometimes they'll bring up YouTube videos or even Rumble videos for you to read or watch for yourself, and sometimes articles on top of that. So it's actually interesting how simple it's getting.
So you're saying I'm smarter than ChatGPT?
Probably.
Because I know things.
It's just going to get it to you faster. That's it.
No, give it a test. I challenge everybody. I challenge everybody in here to do that. If you know something in your book and you know something very well, go to ChatGPT, ask it, and when it gives you an incorrect answer, take a picture of it and plug it in there and see what it does. It would tell you that it's going to update its information. I've done it a few times, especially with the Sumerian text, and the only reason why is because a lot of the stuff that people know comes from Zachariah Sitchin. More people know about Zachariah Sitchin than they know about Samuel Noah Kramer or George Smith or Andrew George even, right? Or even Irving Finkel, at that matter, right? They know more about Sitchin than those individuals. And those individuals were able to actually give you the cuneiform tablet identifiers for you to go read for yourself. So it's just interesting how it's getting to the point where, the information is being processed and given to everybody in the mass.
Yeah, and Sitchin was a big fraud anyway. He was proven to be a big fraud.
That's why I see, and that's why, and you know what, and that's so funny you say that, because I actually creating a PowerPoint presentation on how inaccurate he was. And I'm using the same sources that he tried to say that he had too. But I guess at this point, he didn't really think people were going to do their due diligence. And what really messes up the game is, not to throw shade on anybody, but Billy Carson actually follows a lot what Sitchin says too. And you can't find any of the information that Sitchin says. It's really funny because Dr. Michael S. Heiser actually created a website called Sitchin is Wrong to show you how inaccurate.
He called him out several times for a debate.
Called him out hardcore. And he could not only he called him out, his website was called Sitchin is Wrong. Like, this dude had a real beef with Sitchin and his incorrect information, that he went and bought a website, created it, sitchiniswrong.com.
But rightfully so, because he is a big fraud. I was thinking it, and then Doc said it. But yeah, he
shout out Heiser, R.I.P. Heiser.
Yeah, Heiser, I mean, he was a scholar in many ancient dead languages. So, I mean, this was his field. And so you had this schmuck with no degrees, no college education coming out and saying he's deciphered all these things and come up with these new translations. And so, yeah, Mike was trying to call him out and expose him as a fraud because that was his expertise. That's what he went to school and studied for years. But Zachariah said she wouldn't have nothing to do with him. Even Mike even went on Coast to Coast AM and called him out in front of millions of listeners.
Yep.
I challenged him to a debate too, I think.
Yeah, he called him out. He told him to give him just the cuneiform tablet identifiers. That's why you always will hear me say cuneiform tablet identifiers, because there's actually a website that we can all go to and look at the cuneiform tablets ourselves. It's called the Cuneiform Digital Library of Initiative. And I'm telling you, I learned all this from Dr. Michael S. Heiser. That's why I was telling Doc Brown earlier, one thing about me is I have to have the sources on hand. So if you're saying a source says something, I should be able to read that same exact source you did. If you're telling me there's no source for it, and it's your own translation, then how can I basically verify your information? I'm just supposed to trust it? Well, trusting is what got me in the problem in the first place, because if this is actual facts and no fiction at all, this information should be easily accessible to anybody. But Sitchin, he really did hide a lot of stuff. And I've read his books, and I know he says that he didn't want to expose some or tell on some of the people that helped him get some of the information and this, that, and the third. But he never recreated the tablets himself. It's so easy to recreate them. He doesn't have to take an actual picture of it, but there's no picture of it, no recreation or nothing, no artist drawing or any of that stuff. So it's just, I really do like this conversation. I think we got a lot in common. I'm definitely going to stay in contact with you because
Stitching fiction.
Yeah, I love good conversation. Holler at me anytime, man.
I love working with Doc Brown.
Yeah, it's always a good time with the Doc. Yo, man, thank you very much for coming on, bro. I really appreciate it, especially in such a short notice.
I love this.
Hell yeah. I was just like, I wanted to get you on sooner than later because I didn't want to keep putting it off. It's been too long already. So, and I know you're also a busy man, so you were like, "Oh, I do have today." I was like, "Oh, let me just jump on that," so because it could be like a month and a half, and I didn't want to wait. So, but I really had a good time. Thank you, everybody else too, for joining us. Doc, before we have you plug your stuff, Julia, let everybody know where you can find your show at, or get in touch with you.
Yeah, actually, if you want to work with me or have me on your show, I don't really get on Instagram in that inbox, so email me at ghost.peach@outlook.com. Love working with Doc. I think this is like the third or fourth time we have had a conversation. It's always super interesting. I super enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Of course. No. Thank you for coming on. And Tyrone, what is going on, sir?
All right, yeah, thank you, man. This was a good thing. Like I told you earlier, man, I think we have a lot in common, man. I was really following what you were saying. Everything you can find on me is rebirthoftheword.com is my own website. I have a YouTube. You'll be able to see all that through my website. You also can buy my book, Journey Through the Origins of History, which went #1 on Amazon bestsellers. So check that out. Like I said, Doc, hey, you on it, man. I like the information. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
Of course. Hell yeah. Thank you. Thank you for coming on. And we got Tim Constantine. What is going on, sir? Please let everybody know where they can find your stuff again.
Yeah. Thanks again. Thanks, Julia, Doc, Nick, Tyrone, Fear. I don't know you, but cool comments there. I read some of your stuff. Yeah, Tim Constantine, Sixth Sensory Podcast. I'm actually dropping an episode with Doc tonight on YouTube, and then tomorrow on Cult of Conspiracy, I'm dropping an episode with Doc as well. So, but yeah, Sixth Sensory Podcast. Thanks for having me.
All right. No, thank you, Tim. I appreciate it. Sorry, I sent the link late. My bad. So
it's all good.
Yes, and Fear. Fear, we're going to see if we can let you plug yourself. Unfortunately, I sent him the link late too. So, Fear, can you hear me? Do you want to say, do you want to plug yourself? Do you want to say anything?
Absolutely. I don't know if anybody can hear me, so let's just give this a shot. But yeah, I'm still working on the cookbook. Right now I'm trying to raise funds for a proper camera so I can take the images. But yeah, be on the lookout for Disobedience. I'm sorry I couldn't quite jump up on the mic earlier. I did share all my information inside the chat. So like if anyone's interested in what I had to share, anyone can go look in there. I'm sure that it's going to be logged. Thank you for having me on. I know it just kind of looked like I was sitting here, but the only way I could participate was at least put the information out there in chat, and I'm happy to do that. But thank you, everyone, and great conversation, by the way. And yeah, there's a lot that I really would love to comment in there, but that's going to be for like separate conversations. However, again, thank you, and this has been a blast.
Of course. Thank you, sir. And sorry about your connection. Hopefully, by the next time we get you on, it'll be working a lot better. But I appreciate you trying to jump on anyway. I mean, it was my idea. I was like, let's see what happens. I was like, if anything, just shut off the camera, but still didn't help. But for people who do watch the videos and check the live replay, he did throw tons and tons of stuff up in that chat. He wasn't lying, so go check that out. And now, finally, Doc, please. Like I said, you brought the heat. You brought it with 93 octane. That's what's up.
93 all the way, baby.
Yes, my man. So please let everybody know where they can find you at, sir.
Hey guys, thank you for having me. I've worked with a lot of you guys multiple times. This is my first time meeting you two gentlemen, and like you said, I think we have some good conversations in the future. But yeah, anywhere you guys can consume content, guys. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Instagram, all the social tags, all those fine establishments. Just search up Prometheus Lens Podcast, and my website. I just actually give it a facelift. I've redone the whole website, so go check it out. It's PrometheusLensPodcast.com. I started a newsletter sign up. So if you go to the website and sign up for the newsletter, you get 3 chapters of my book for free. And you also get a code to sign up for my ad-free listening experience on Supercast for a month. So go check that out. Sign up for the newsletter. You'll get all kinds of updates on conferences and stuff that I'm doing and stuff about the show.
I like that, dude. I'm definitely going to sign up for that newsletter. That's what's up. Doc, thank you again, man. Like I said, you always bring tons and tons of info. I appreciate you jumping on so fast. And, everybody else, thank you for joining. It was really a great show. Awesome chats. Tons of stuff that I didn't know anything about. And that's what's up. Everybody in the chat, thank you. There was a lot of people here again from the beginning to the end, and a lot of great stuff added in there as well. And that is the end of another Occult Rejects. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.